We are
Good
live
evening.
streaming.
Good evening and welcome to members, officers, press and public joining tonight's Strategic Development Committee. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so welcome also to anybody watching live or after the event. Some of our officers are joining this evening's meeting via Zoom. Can everyone present in the room hear me? Great, and those on Zoom, are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. My name is Councillor Rachel Tripp. I'm the chair of the Strategic Development Committee and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. As always, members in the room, when you're speaking, can you please speak clearly and loudly so the microphone in the middle can pick you up? For those joining us via Zoom, please make sure your microphone is muted if you're not speaking. I'm now going to ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves, starting with Blossom.
Councillor Mavers, Ali Pontin, Councillor for Forest Gate South, and member of this committee.
Councillor Griffiths of Kennington South.
Councillor Terence Paul, Stratford.
You can then come to Daniel.
I'm Dan Legg, I'm Principal Planner at Newham.
James Bolt, Senior Development Manager.
Alexander Wise.
George, Democratic Services. Everyone along behind you as well. And those officers who've joined us online.
Liam McFadden, Principal Planner.
Narinda, did you want to introduce yourself as well? And then perhaps Toby.
Just on mute.
I think you might be on mute, Narinda. We can't hear you.
I'll try again. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Narinda will be Principal Transport Planner, Lambda Birmingham. Thank you.
Thank you. And Toby?
I'm Toby Johnson, I'm chair of the Design Review Panel.
Lovely, thank you very much. And we've just also been joined, just in time, for introductions. John, did you want to introduce yourself?
Councillor John Morris, for South Western Kennington East.
Thank you. Just to remind members, as always, when the vote's taken, it will be by way of raising our physical hand so we can capture that on the screen. Item number 1 is apologies. I haven't received any apologies for tonight's meeting. Okay. Item number 2 is declarations of interest.
Yes, I'd like to declare that 2 of the applicants are in my ward.
In your ward. We'll make sure that the minutes reflect that. Thank you. Any additional declarations of interest? In which case, item number 3 is determining planning applications. Members are asked to note the advice from the Head of Legal Services on determining planning applications. Is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. Item number 4, announcements from the Chair. Requests to address the committee. We've received the following requests to address the committee. Could the speakers please identify themselves when I call out your name? For item 5, that's the Land of Knights Road, I have John Mulryan, Jeremy Castle, Justin Holder, Stephen Tennant, and Patricia Gipkowska. And I understand you brought a wider team with you to answer questions. I shan't perhaps go through all of those. I understand we do have objectors from Tate and Lyle Sugars registered to speak, but was there an update from them?
Yes, yeah. So earlier today, Tate and Lyle Sugars have confirmed that they won't be attending to speak in committee this evening. And they've removed their objections, noise and highway grounds. They've passed on a neutral comment that they'd like to provide to the committee.
In which case, if it's not too long, it probably makes sense for you to read that at the point at which they would otherwise be registered to speak.
Yeah, no problem at all.
On item number 6, the land at 10 to 11 Brunel Street and 36 to 48 Shirley Street, we have Neil Dealey and Harry Aston.
Yeah.
And I think we also have James Pope, perhaps joining us online. Or James may be logging on later. And then, great, thank you. Item 7, the Holiday Inn Express. We have Neil Rowley and Ellie Cannon. Great, thank you. And item number 8, number 1, Stansfeld Road. We have Jamie Dempster, Jessica Johnson, Olivia Amos, and Roy Collado. Thank you very much. The usual practice is to allow up to 5 minutes in total for both supporters and for any objectors. Is that agreed? Thank you. Can we agree the remainder of the order of business as outlined on the agenda?
Agreed.
Thank you. So please note the full consideration and planning assessment of matters is covered comprehensively in our enormous report. I know members will have had full regard to the committee report, so the Office of Presentations, particularly in light of the number of items on the agenda tonight, are going to be a summary of the key issues only. And I'd also just like to draw members' attention to the officer update. There are hard copies of that. Can I please call on the applicants team for item 5 to address the committee? Presentation to share.
I'm going to share it for them, I think.
Great, thank you. I will run a timer on my phone and I will try to get your attention to let you know when you just have a couple of minutes left. Pauline's going to share the presentation for you, so we're ready to start whenever you are. Are you able to increase the size of the presentation, Pauline?
Oh, can you not see it?
We can see it. It's not quite filling the whole screen. I wonder if we might be able to make it slightly larger from this end.
I think that's the largest.
Okay, well, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'm John Ryan, Chief Executive. For over 40 years, Ballymore has specialised in urban regeneration, delivering mixed-use neighbourhoods and remaining long-term stewards of the place. We've been committed to East London for decades, and we're proud of what we've delivered in Newham, particularly in neighbouring Royal Wharf. There's now home to nearly 10,000 people in tribal community. Knights Road is an extension of that community that has been built in Royal Wharf, transforming an underused industrial site into a well-designed mixed-use neighbourhood that responds to Newham's needs for homes, jobs, and high-quality public space. The scheme will deliver nearly 1,700 homes, including affordable housing and a strong proportion of family homes. It will also provide more than 11,000 square metres of light industrial workspace, ensuring that this remains a place not just to live but to work. In addition, it will deliver a significant new public realm, improving walking and cycling connections, creating flexible ground floor space to support them. We believe Lyle Park will become a benchmark urban park, the central everyday space for people living like the best neighbourhood parks in London. We have committed £1 million of ring fence funding, subject to consent, to establish a stakeholder co-design group, council and local community, ensuring that investment reflects local priorities and supports growing neighbourhoods. Our proposals have been met with strong local support through extensive engagement, including doorstepping and outreach. We have received nearly 950 supportive responses, limited objection, which is notable for a scheme of this scale. This feedback is reflected in the committee report and highlights clear demand for new homes alongside jobs, play space, and greener public areas. We recognise the importance of protecting existing businesses and residents. We have worked closely with surrounding industrial partners to develop a comprehensive livable mitigation strategy, including measures to manage dust and noise, carefully planned logistics to minimize construction impacts. London is experiencing an acute housing shortage. Ballymore is one of the few developers who started new homes on site in London last year, starting nearly 1,000 homes, and we are ready to deliver this scheme. This is a proposal that brings forward homes, jobs, investment, and meaningful community benefit at a time when delivery is critically needed. We respectfully ask you to support this application. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Jeremy Fossell. I'm the agent for the application, the lead planning team. Throughout the last 2 years, Ballymore's team was actively engaged with the local public, the Newham's planning, design, environmental health, highways officers to produce a high-quality development that delivers much-needed residential and industrial floor space at Knights Road. If you could just move to the third slide. So, just a summary here. In recent weeks, we have continued to engage with the office of local landowners to positively respond to comments so that the application manages important issues such as improvements to road layouts, sequencing of highway and development works, and mitigating the impact of building homes near industrial uses, otherwise known as the Agent of Change. This is culminated in this hybrid application for you today. The next slide shows briefly 2 phases that deliver the 1,600 homes that John had already mentioned. And it also delivers a vast range of other benefits, including links to Lar Park. On the next slide, I just briefly show you you can just see the phasing there. So the first phase will complete in 2031. And it will achieve a very substantial contribution to one of your strategic mixed-use allocations in the old document. I'll hand over to Justin to take over the next couple of minutes.
Thank you so much. I think, Chair, members, my name is Justin Ford. I am very involved. I think that I moved there with my first problem.
Can you speak up, please, sir?
Of course. I moved there in 2018, just as my first job. And I now also work as a volunteer coach for the Royal Football Club, which is based right there in the community. Roblox has grown rapidly over the past decade, and developments like Royal and Riverscape, we've seen a real family-focused community taking shape in that space. The Knightsbridge development is a key part of continuing that growth, bringing families into the area. But the communities don't just grow through housing; they grow through shared spaces and opportunities presented to young people. And as a coach, I see that demand every week. We simply don't have enough facilities. There's even more demand for services and holiday clubs during the school holidays, so we have children joining us. The Lyle Park centre that would be right there in the middle of that development would be significant opportunity to change that. With some investment that will be included with all of this development, it can become proper community sport and activity space better. So the 2 local primary schools and potentially also the secondary school that's in that area. And make a significant change to the development of grassroots sports and bring further community development. I significantly support this development. I hope it delivers not just homes, but kind of community development.
That is the end of your 5 minutes. Thank you very much. As I suggested, perhaps at this point where we normally hear from objectors, it might make sense for you to read out Tate & Lyle's comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is directly from Tate & Lyle Sugars. So they know that they are Newham's oldest business, supporting over 850 jobs locally, and are proud to play a large role in the community. We urge the committee to look particularly carefully at the proposed plans to change the one-way road system through Knights and Bradford Road into a 2 set of roads, both between traffic. On Knights Road, we believe this change that sees multiple HGVs travelling in both directions has the potential to make the road less safe for all users, especially pedestrians and cyclists. We remind the committee that one of our employees, Ben Wales, lost his life in 2017 due to a cycle accident on Knights Road where he was run over. Further, the changes can negatively impact site access and egress for industrial traffic for the businesses on both sides of Knights Road. This could have operational impacts for businesses, and any delays and or manoeuvring difficulties in turn likely to make the road less safe. We've worked collaboratively with the applicant and the London Borough of Newham and accept that our concerns have at least been partly taken into account via Section 106 obligations and planning considerations, conditions. The committee should satisfy itself that the legitimate safety and operational concerns are adequately addressed by these mechanisms. The end of their statement.
Thank you very much. In which case, shall we move on to the officer presentation?
So item 5 relates to land at Knights Road, located off North Woolwich Road, Silvertown. Slide 2 shows the site location and a recent aerial photograph. The application site is outlined in red on the slide. The proposal site covers an area of approximately 5.26 hectares and currently consists of a handful of residential properties at the top of Bradfield Road, with self-storage and waste treatment facilities operating further down Bradfield Road. The site is bound by North Village Road to the north, which provides primary access into Bradfield Road, Lyle Park to the east, Knights Road and the Greenshields Estate to the west, and the River Thames to the south. West Silvertown DLR station is situated immediately to the northwest, while industrial operators such as Tate and Tom are situated to the west. The land uses within this area have evolved over recent times, with the managed release of industrial land to make way for residentially led mixed-use developments. The application site consists of a significant portion of the Lyle Park West strategic site allocation within the adopted local plan. A comprehensive master plan for the site allocation must deliver a mixed-use development through the managed release of strategic industrial land with a new local centre, improvements to Lyle Park and enhancements to the active travel network. It will also be important for the development to coexist with industrial businesses which will continue to operate on Knights Road. The site is also allocated within the emerging local plan, which follows the same site boundary and similar objectives. The allocation currently carries some weight in decision making. A hybrid planning application has been submitted, which seeks to demolish all existing buildings and structures and deliver a mixed-use development. This would consist of 643 residential units within the detailed component, and permission for further residential, commercial, industrial, and community floor space is sought in outline. Up to 1,667 homes will be delivered across all phases. The development would be supported by site-wide remediation, new pedestrian and vehicle access, highway works, public realm, hard and soft landscaping, car parking, cycle parking, and flood defence improvements. Slide 6 shows photographs taken surrounding the site. The key planning issues which will be covered in this presentation are on the slide, and all other material planning considerations are comprehensively covered within the committee report. It's just a slide on tilted balance. So the tilted balance is a key principle of the NPPF that creates a strong presumption in favour of granting planning permission for sustainable development. The tilted balance is adopted in decision making when the local planning authority cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply or fails to pass the housing delivery test. In terms of the principal development, the proposal provides the opportunity to deliver a significant new neighbourhood on industrial land, which is expected to be vacated later this year. The development provides an opportunity to remediate the site and deliver new homes and supporting infrastructure. The development would deliver up to 1,667 new homes, which would make a considerable contribution towards the housing stock within the borough, particularly noting the borough's housing delivery past years. A good variety of non-residential uses would be provided to support the new neighbourhood, including retail, cafe restaurants, professional services and community uses. These land uses would support the local centre, which is to be provided as part of the consented L&Q scheme, however would not directly compete. Floor space within the outline phase would also be afforded to industrial uses to compensate for the managed release of strategic industrial land elsewhere within the site application. This would continue to meet demand for such uses in the borough and support small enterprises and green tech in line with emerging local plan policy. The proposed land uses would accord with the objectives set out within the Royal Docks OAPF document, which seek to concentrate housing delivery and job creation in areas with good transport accessibility. The development would also make a positive contribution towards local employment, with 2,425 construction jobs and 440 end-use jobs expected to be created, alongside a sizable financial contribution to our new employment. The application has been assessed with regards to policy S1 of the local plan, which establishes that strategic sites should be designed and developed comprehensively. The proposals largely demonstrate that overarching master planning principles are accorded with, insofar as the scheme would successfully integrate with existing residential uses situated eastward of Lyle Park, delivering an acceptable mix of housing, improve connectivity, and provide sufficient infrastructure to serve the residential uses. It would also have regards to tall building requirements and make a sizable contribution towards infrastructure via Section 106 agreements and community infrastructure levy. However, some concerns have been raised regarding the application's ability to provide a smooth transition between heavy industrial uses and more sensitive uses which are to be delivered as part of the application. This area on the map highlighted in blue has been carved out. As such, the developer has provided a master plan statement which indicates the types of land use which could be delivered within this buffer zone, including light industry and small businesses. This buffer zone would complete the strategic master plan, and therefore it's important that it is delivered. Therefore, an appropriate Section 106 obligation has been drafted. In line with agent of change principles, the proposed development would not cause problems for existing lawful neighbours, particularly those industrial businesses which operate from and will continue to operate from this road. Whilst an in-principle objection to the development has been raised by the Council's Environmental Health Officer, it's acknowledged that the site is allocated for mixed-use development, and therefore, with the appropriate mitigation measures to address agent of change principles, the principle of development should be supported. The environmental statement provided as part of the planning application does not identify any significant vibration sources within the area. However, recognises that industrial noise from various receptors along Nice Road and within surrounding safeguard wharfs. As such, appropriate mitigation has been designed into buildings within the detailed phase of development. This includes ensuring habitable rooms do not overlook industrial uses, the installation of winter gardens rather than open balconies, the installation of high-performance glazing, non-openable windows, and mechanical ventilation systems. Various acoustic conditions have also been secured to ensure residential amenity is safeguarded. With regards to affordable housing, as originally submitted, the scheme sought to deliver 20% affordable housing. However, over the course of the planning application, it's become clear that a considerably greater contribution towards highway work and river wall roads would be necessary, which has had an impact upon the viability of the scheme. The developer has submitted an updated financial viability assessment, which has been independently reviewed by Quintic on behalf of the council. It's also been subject to review by the GLA. The review of the updated financial viability assessment concludes that 9.2% affordable housing provision would be the maximum reasonable amount which could viably be delivered based upon current variables. Whilst it is acknowledged that the affordable housing offer would be below the 35% targeted by the London Plan, all affordable units would be socially rented tenure, which would be genuinely affordable for residents of the borough. It's also noted that a sizable proportion of the affordable housing would be delivered in the first phase. While the applicant is not in agreement on the IRR figure associated with the development profit, nor the split of the surplus profits, the council have adopted the recommendations of Quintic within its heads of terms, which align with the terms on other strategic sites which were granted in the borough in the past year. There is also potential for public subsidies to be secured for the site, which could increase the overall affordable housing. The provision of abandoned homes proposed in both the detailed and outline phase of development, which fall short of the target of 39% set out in the local plan. And therefore, as previously noted, an FBA accompanies the planning application. The 3-bedroom family-sized units offer will constitute a shortfall against policy requirements. However, it's noted that larger family housing units have been prioritised, with 179 3-bed 5-person units and 296 3-bedroom 6-person units to be delivered. This would equate to 28.5% of homes site-wide being suitable for families. While it is acknowledged that the housing offer would not meet the minimum percentage set out in the policy, it is agreed that viability, Section 106 and Section 278 funding requirements are reasonable justification for this, and the housing mix proposed would still make a positive contribution towards the overall quantum of family housing within Newham. In terms of design, the scheme has been subject to extensive pre-app discussions between the council and developer, and has also been subject to design review panels and a further chairs review prior to the submission of the planning application. The panel were broadly supportive of the massing, scale and urban structure of the development proposals, and were satisfied that the development would appear comfortable in the wider context of neighbouring developments. The detailed component of development would consist of 3 blocks, Block A, B and L. These buildings are arranged around enclosed courtyards, and the frontages address Bradfield Road, Lyle Park and North Woolwich Road. Retail uses, cafes and duplex homes would be situated at ground floor level to create a high proportion of active frontages supported by well-located communal entrances. Concerns have previously been raised regarding potential visual homogeneity between blocks. This has since been addressed by introducing additional variety to facing materials through variations in texture and colour. The detailed design of buildings within the outline component would be assessed at reserve matter stage following an approved design code. The height of the proposed buildings across the detailed and outline components would range from 4 stories to 22 stories. Maximum building heights would be restricted to 75 metres due to the site's proximity to London City Airport, and would be controlled by approved design code and parameter plans, which must be complied with at reserve matter stage. The adopted local plan site allocation generally allows for heights of between 10-storey and 12 stories and up to 18 stories in key locations. All buildings within the detailed component of the development would accord with these height parameters. However, Block E to be delivered within the outline phase, located in the southwestern corner of the site, would exceed the 18-storey threshold at 22 stories. Given that this building is currently in the outline component of the development, it's important that the architectural quality is properly scrutinised using the design code at reserve matter stage. Additionally, a Section 106 obligation requiring a limited design competition to ensure that this element is of the highest design quality is also included within the heads of terms. It's considered that the scale of the buildings would appear comfortable within context, noting the comparable design height, building heights in the neighbouring Royal Wharf development. The L&Q site, which forms part of the strategic site allocation, also has consent for buildings of up to 20 stories in height. In the context of other public benefits and in conjunction with the high quality of design, the proposed heights are considered acceptable on balance. Turning to Lyle Park, a contribution of £1 million has been secured by a Section 106 agreement to be invested within Lyle Park enhancements. There would be no hard boundaries installed across the western boundary of the park to ensure that the park is accessible at all times, and a direct between the proposed development and Royal Wharf is achieved. A community park hub would be situated at ground floor level of Block B, providing dedicated storage facilities and changing rooms, which could be utilised for activities within Lyle Park. A master plan, indicatively, has been developed, which identifies how Lyle Park could look once improvement works have been undertaken. With regards to the impact of amenity, the housing SPG allows flexible and sensitive application of daylight and sunlight guidance for high density and regenerative developments, taking into account local context and the optimisation of housing delivery within the site. The submitted daylight and sunlight assessment shows good internal daylight and sunlight provision, with 80% of habitable rooms meeting daylight targets and 70% of units receiving recommended levels of sunlight exposure. With regards to privacy and overlooking, the detailed scheme has been carefully designed to minimise overlooking and protect privacy of future occupiers, with generous separation distances to existing residential receptors, and an expectation that the adjacent Greenfields estate would be redeveloped as part of the wider master plan as part of the industrial buffer zone legal obligation. In terms of the existing highway layout, a one-way highway system operates in the area. Priority junctions are located on Knights Road and Bradfield Road, which serve North Woolwich Road. Vehicles enter onto Knights Road and egress back onto North Woolwich Road via the Bradfield Road junction. Accesses to the Greenshields estate are situated between Knights Road and Bradfield Road, found off both streets, and on-street parking is also provided for permit holders along these roads. It is proposed to revise the existing one-way highway layout to a two-way system. The works would consist of a redesign of both junctions and highway layouts of Knights Road and Bradfield Road. The installation of a roundabout at the bottom of Knights Road to allow for vehicles to turn and redirect towards North Village Road, and the stopping up of vehicular accesses which currently serve the Greenshields estate. A modal filter would also be installed between the two roads to restrict HGV access to Bradfield Road, but would ensure that pedestrians and cyclists are able to move freely. The highway layout, once fully completed, is shown on this slide. The principle of these proposals are supported by the Highways Authority. The developer is obliged to enter to agree the highway design with the Highways Authority in consultation with industrial operators and complete the works prior to the commencement of the mixed-use development. A detailed construction logistics plan has also been secured by a condition to provide the necessary assurance that the highway works would not result in undue disruption for businesses that operate along Knights Road. In terms of sustainable transport, existing on-street parking would be removed to ensure that the new highway layout is deliverable. This would also ensure that the development would be car-free, aside from blue badge parking provision as required by policy. This is welcomed by transport officers. Cycle storage provision would be delivered in line with London Plan requirements, both residential and commercial aspects of the scheme. This would also include spaces for large bicycles, such as cargo bikes. Residents would receive car club credits, and EV charging facilities would also be provided in line with London Plan requirements. A travel plan was submitted for both for each phase of development, both residential. Various transport improvements would be delivered as part of the development to enhance the wider strategic transport network, the majority of which would be secured by a Section 106 agreement. This includes a £3.8 million contribution towards local public transport, which could be directed towards increasing lift capacity of West Silvertown DLR station and providing night bus services on North Village Road. In terms of flood risk, the existing flood defences protecting the site from risk of flooding from the River Thames are currently inadequate for the lifetime of development, and therefore improvement works are necessary. The application proposes to upgrade the existing flood defence protecting the site by replacing the existing river wall to align with the Thames Estuary 2100 requirements and ensure that occupants of the site would be protected from the risk of flooding for the lifetime of the development. This slide just shows the key Section 106 heads of terms, contributions. And then in terms of the public consultation, we sent letters out to 5,765 properties and received 24 responses, of which we had a petition of support from the developer, and we've responded to the comments within the committee report. So in summary, members are asked to note the update report and resolve to agree with the reasons for approval, subject to the Mayor of London or delegated authorised officer advising that the contempt of the grounds of concern in the application to delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Development to grant plan permission subject to conditions and the completion of the second agreement. That concludes the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Members, comments or questions, please. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. I note that the environment team objected and still objected when they saw that certain mitigations were in place. Specifically, there were concerns about dust, which cannot be resolved by condition. I wanted to ask if you can go into more detail about why dust in particular can't be resolved by condition.
Did you want a minute?
No, it's, I think we're here. So there are actually conditions that we we have secured with the developer that do make reference to dust mitigation, including the construction and demolition environmental management plan. So the applicant is required to ensure that all air quality control measures are compliant with the control of dust and emissions during construction and demolition document, which is a fairly standard condition that we would put on any strategic size developments. And from our perspective, anyway, that is sufficient to mitigate dust that would be generated during the construction and demolition phases.
Councillor Sally Hunton.
This is to the developers, please. With concern to the high level of contamination currently at the site, which is one of the reasons why it's still not being developed, can you please explain how that you're going to mitigate the dispersal of contaminants within the area? So I take it you're not 100% sure what's there yet. I mean, you'll be aware of what the sites were used for, which read that in the report, which you will be unaware of things like how much asbestos there is, or anything else that's deeply unpleasant or historically unpleasant that wasn't recorded.
Yeah, so what's been agreed with the planning teams that the.
Sorry, could you speak up, please,
Yes,
sir?
what's been agreed with planning policy. There are conditions which do require initial survey testing to be undertaken prior to commencement of works. It would then be necessary to inform the council of any findings, basically as a result of that survey is undertaken. There'll be necessary checks in place to make sure that works. There will then need to be a verification report which requires sufficient details outlining the testing that's been undertaken, where, if necessary, any remediation work has been undertaken to ensure that those conditions have been rectified and remediated sufficiently to allow for those works to be undertaken and for the development to not only continue but also then be at an appropriate stage. Right.
So what you're referring to, I take it, is those contaminants that you're expecting to be above ground level. How about the contaminants you're expecting to be in the soil and subsoil? So what level are you expecting to have to remove soil and subsoil because of leaching?
Yeah, in previous projects, because we've obviously just developed the roll off.
Yeah, I'm aware.
So we would expect to be stripping off between 2 and 4 meters as part of our kind of strip for the initial strip. But obviously we haven't been able to do this site investigation works as it stands at the moment because the site is fundamentally left and used as it stands.
Yeah, we understand about that. So that's the level to which you're hoping to strip down to is between 2 and 4 meters. And are you going to have archaeologists on site to actually undertake the watching with the depths that you'll be taking that out to make sure that you're not destroying any historic landscapes, particularly the European, importance of the trackways in this area of Europe?
Yeah, so that kind of thing has also been subject to that.
Sorry, can you speak?
Sorry, yeah, so that's also been subject to consultation beforehand for the application, and there are conditions that have been included that do require the method statement to be prepared that sets out how that's going to be managed on site. And it's a similar case actually to the contamination side, where there is a requirement in addition to provide the necessary updates to findings on site to make sure that anything can be handled as it needs to be agreed.
Okay, I'm not sure if that actually answers my question. Because what is it that's being planned? What have you planned? Considering that with the excavation of the docks, with the excavation around Beckton, quite significant waterlogged landscape features were found. and also artefacts such as the boat in the British Museum, etc. Have you got that planned? Because I don't see that in the report. I don't see any mention to whether you're having a watching brief. I can understand, of course, that you can't undertake any kind of ground survey until you've undertaken your demolition and you've got an understanding of how far down you're going to have to remove new soil and subsoils. But I can't see anything actually stated, concrete.
So an evaluation will be undertaken prior to the commencement, but rather the conditions that will require that the analysis that will be undertaken on site. It will then be in correspondence discussion with the relevant council how that condition not only prepared and implemented, but also satisfied prior to that work being undertaken. So it's a level of detail that will be set out in agreement with the council on those conditions requirements.
Perhaps I could bring officers in. Is there a condition about that?
So we've got sort of a two-tier of conditions. So condition C7 is for a written scheme of investigation. So that will require that to be undertaken prior to demolition and development being taking place. Ordinarily, Historic England and Glass would have expected that to be done prior to.
But it can't be because of the standard structures.
Because obviously there's tenants on the site currently. So we have that, and then we also have a foundation design condition, which is condition C8, which relates to the design and construction methodology around laying foundations to ensure that anything that may not have been picked up in the written scheme of investigation can potentially be picked up there, and archaeological remains.
Okay, and that includes, of course, I take it, the piers that may be sunk to support the foundations, even though they may be going down further than 4 metres is needed. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Chair. My question will be dealing with Live Park. I know the applicant used the football team to highlight the importance of Live Park. I also note the capital contribution of the developer for Live Park. Read from the pack. It says without the park improvements forming part of the application and without a clear mechanism for delivering these improvement works, there is a risk for these upgrades to Live Park will not be delivered as part of the current development. So my question perhaps to the applicant and the officers, what assurance can be provided that there's a clear mechanism to do this? Master plans don't build anything, they give guidance to. I'm looking for who is going to be undertaking the improvements of our park, who is actually going to be spending the money, and because we wouldn't want an application to go through without our park being remediated. So I'm interested in what assurances, clear mechanism is clearly outlined in the report as a gap.
I might refer that to officers, given that you're looking for an assurance from them.
No problem. So as it stands, obviously Lyle Park is situated outside the red line boundary because it's in council ownership rather than valuables. So we've done the most that we can as part of the planning application to ensure that Lyle Park can be accessed through the development without sort of hard boundaries along the western side of the park. And then in addition to that, we have the obligation of £1 million paid to the council. And then on top of that, a 24-hour access strategy to ensure that Lyle Park is always going to be accessible. In terms of spending that money, we would expect the developer to continue engaging with our green spaces team. Obviously, the master plan has been provided very much indicative and what could be achieved. And there will need to be continued discussions as part of the Section 96 negotiations, but also in the future once consent is potentially in place.
Do you want to come back, Terry?
Yeah, just go back to the word clear mechanism. Not what you outline is an intention, not a clear mechanism. So you mentioned Newham Council there. are you saying Newham Council have to discharge and spend £1 million? My question is, who is spending the £1 million? When, by whom, and by what?
So I think at the moment, we have a header term in the Section 106, which requires the £1 million to be paid to the local authority. I think as part of those Section 106 discussions, we will need to sort of flesh out those mechanisms and really establish like who is going to undertake the works, what those works do entail, and sort of a delivery sequence for those.
So, right, through you, Chair. So the £1 million from the developer, will that be paid after the local authority comes up with a clear plan? Or will the developer have to give £1 million to the council? Hope for the best.
At the moment, it's payable prior to the commencement of above ground works of the initial phase of development. So that's very early in the development process. So we would like to think that with the funding coming that early in the process, that by the time you have people occupying the first phase of development in 2031, you will have progress in Lyle Park, and it will be much higher quality than.
Will that be done by the local authority then? Now the £1 million is paid. I'm trying to get to the issue for me is clear mechanism. You can get, it seems we have an orphan here, no one's owning, right? So £1 million have been paid. Who does the work? Council. Is there a condition on Newham Council for its part and bargain? I'm trying to get to the fact who is discharging this £1 million. Because the developer is paying the money. We're all going to be nicey about how we discharge it, but no one's actually saying who's accountable for spending and improving that part.
I think that set of term is deliberately flexible, so it will be available, that option will be available in discussions, that who is best placed to deliver and spend it, even though that money will be coming to the council will then be the guardian as to how that money is spent. So if there is projects that are identified by our parks team and they're already doing the works, it may be best from a contractual perspective that they then deliver on that aspect of it. But if there is a situation where the developer is best placed to do that, then by agreement with the council, then we can agree with the developer mutually how much is needed and that they're going to deliver it.
Was your question specifically about Lyle Park?
Yes, it's.
Then I'll come to the other hand first.
Thank you. I take it that I don't know whether this is the right word phrasing, that the £1 million due to the 106 agreement is basically a levy, not a gift from the developer. So therefore, it would be within it would follow 106 jurisdiction and legal use of that money. Yeah, am I right in saying that?
That's correct.
We do understand, and we can understand the developer's desire to have as much of that in place when the first accommodation for sale is ready to be sold, so that incoming tenants or owners will gain the benefit of the beautified Lyle Park, therefore push up prices. We can understand that, but also people around will benefit from it. But I just wanted to assure that it's not a gift. It's not being given over on determined by what the council does with it precisely, that it's actually part of the 106 money that legally the developer has to share with the local authority, who then dispenses that money appropriately along its local plan and 106 guidance.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
While we're on Lyle Park, I did see some other hands, which I will come to. I did want to ask, perhaps again, this is a question for colleagues, for officers. The idea of the 24-hour access to the park from the development sounds really positive on the face of it, obviously, for those residents who then effectively have a kind of green space. But have we spoken to colleagues from Parks and Green Spaces that they're content about the sort of crime and ASB or CCTV requirements that fall out of that. I know a lot of our parks are locked up at night. Yeah, for various quite good reasons, and we know what happens when they aren't. And I just wanted to make sure that that was something that had been factored in.
It has, yeah. So the Section 106 obligation has gone via our design colleagues and our green space colleagues. How we go about actually formulating that strategy is something to discuss in further detail as part of the Section 106 negotiations.
Okay.
But there is also condition to lighting strategy, and also the developer would be obligated to work alongside the designing out crime team of the Metropolitan Police, as they would with all other parts of the development. At the moment, we don't have any objections from the Metropolitan Police from a designing out crime perspective, subject to planning condition to ensure that designing out crime strategy is brought forward within 6 months of the development getting consent.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Griffiths, I think you were.
Yeah, two things. I wasn't going to give up my question about Lyle Park, but I understand that on the other side, the Deanston Wharf or Royal Wharf Phase 4, there's quite a low fence and gates in it that are locked, and I've not heard of any problems since then, but it might be surprising for a park. You never know what people get up to after done. So I'm assuming that's all under control. The other thing was I remember giving permission for a data centre that was going to trade surplus cooling water. I can't quite remember whether it was near enough to this to be able to make any use of that. I think it was a bit further too far west, wasn't it?
It's in the vicinity. Yeah, it's near Siltown.
And has the opportunity of linking up this development to the excess heat provided by that data centre been investigated?
It has.
Wonder whether we might just want to flag that future developments, it'd be really helpful to at least ask the question.
So yeah, we haven't got anything that necessarily relates to the data centre per se, but there is a Section 106 obligation which states that the developer should use reasonable endeavours to connect to district heat network.
In which case that captures that. I'm just going to come in briefly, and then I did see Councillor Morris, and then I'll come back to Madeline. I wanted to ask the developer about the percentage of affordable homes. Obviously, I've heard all of the justification about how we've ended up with the vendor. We've got to 9.2%, which is obviously really far below the kind of numbers that we want to see here. It is appreciated that those are all social rent homes. You know, that is a genuinely affordable product, which does offer what people in Newham need. Obviously, 9.2% doesn't even come close to what people in Newham need. And I just really wanted to hear you respond to that, because this is one of the most important things that we are trying to get out of every single development as a committee.
Yeah, I mean, the project has been extensively viability tested, and
Sorry, can you speak up?
Sorry. The project has been extensively viability tested, and it's been demonstrated this is the maximum, more than the maximum viable amount of homes to be provided on this site. Very high cost of remediation site, which we've already been through, as well as works to the river wall, plus the highway works to the Knights Road.
And I think the important point about the costs that Steve mentioned is that the cost for the river wall and highways in particular come about since the planning application was submitted. That those additional costs alongside changes in the other inputs to the appraisal have meant that the affordable housing numbers had to come down, and that's been winter damage.
And those costs as well have been also assessed as well as the making sure that the costs have been assumed and calculated for those units there. Broadly agreeing those highway works and river wall.
Basically, from our perspective, we typically deliver far more affordable housing than our previous products. You know, it gives us no pleasure to be here at 9.9% affordable housing. The industry has gone through an unprecedented period over the last 4 or 5 years through extraordinary increase in costs, significant economic headwinds, and market for private housing, which has flatlined for over 10 years. So I think even though it's disappointing when at these levels, I think that's the reality of what we're seeing. Really struggling. Paying those at affordable housing that would have been typical only a few years ago.
I think it's worth stressing that Bangor remembering to maximise the ability of affordable housing. We've made evident by the fact that applications already been made for grant funding to see where that can be maximised further. And that's why we've also been having the conversations with the council. We have been making sure there are sufficient appropriate review mechanisms in place, be reviewing that affordable housing as the development is delivered, both in terms of the detail.
No, we haven't done affordable housing. We've successfully registered our own registered provider, and that's the entity that has applied for grant funding for this project. And we're hopeful if we're successful with that grant funding, that we'll be able to increase the levels of.
And obviously, if that were possible, that would be something that committee would really welcome. Like I said, it would be wrong not to emphasise how important the provision of family-sized, genuinely affordable homes are. That is the overwhelming need across Newham. Since you mentioned the review mechanism, I just wanted to double check with officers. I could see from the conditions that there were early, mid-stage and late reviews with an agreed IRR and an 80-20 surplus split. Is that standard in terms of what we normally agree with developers?
It is, yes, for strategic site schemes, yeah.
Okay, so that's the basis on which we'll be looking at this. Thank you. The various other hands up. John, I saw yours first, and I'm going to go to Blossom at the end.
Thank you, Chair. I have a supplementary question to my previous question. So I note on page 58 of the report, it says that concerns in relation to dust generation cannot be resolved by way of condition. And I assume that this means dust not created through the actual demolition and construction, but dust perhaps through industrial usage. And so going back to my previous question, why cannot that be resolved by condition? And a second question would be, so Tate & Lyle transport consultant said the transport assessment was inaccurate on vehicle movements. And for themselves also raised doubts on the two-way operation. Can you ask me the basis on which you think the highway is specifically safe, particularly for pedestrians and cyclists on Bradford Road?
Yeah, so I'll let my colleague Norinda, who's joined us on Zoom, take the highways question.
Through the chair, thank you, Norinda Ubi. Yes, we've had a number of meetings with Tate & Lyle and their consultants, and certainly with the developers consultant as well. Yes, there were concerns early on in terms of the data that was used for the trip generation, but further addendums have been submitted since then, and the new data was taken into consideration in terms of the trips for Tate & Lyle side and the tarmac. The most important thing, and I always echo what Councillor Tripp says, is the safety for us. And we've worked very hard to make sure that the proposal that we have, it's been very challenging, but the proposal that we have in front of us now with all the additional information in terms of the sight lines, in terms of the safety implications all along Knights Road, and the new corridor scheme that we have, that there is now sufficient information for us to say, yes, we're fully satisfied in terms of the safety aspect. And also, there was questions about the delays to the businesses, and I think that's been looked at very carefully, and the development consultant have done a lot of work on that to make sure that, in fact, it is an improvement. There will be an extensive improvement to what the delay is likely to be, rather than there is a worse scenario. So, we are fully satisfied. on all the information that we have currently. Yeah.
Did you have a follow-up question on safety as a road, John?
Less so the safety, but specifically, what was the concerns by the consultant on the accuracy of the data?
It was the trips. I'm sorry. It was the trips from Tate and Lyle site, which were taken at a specific time. So they used the industrial data system, which is the TRIX analysis, but not specific to their site. So a second so data was taken for the trips that were supplied by Tate and Lyle and interrogated within the transport assessment and the mechanism to make sure that their trips were accurate and taken into account, especially for the access on to Northbridge Road and the impact it may have on the Royal Docks Corridor scheme. Our officers, highway officers, engineers have worked very hard to look at all the necessary delays and the safety implications. They are now fully satisfied with the, I think, probably fourth iteration of the design for the junction on Knights Road. So we have taken everything into consideration what Tate and Lyle were asking us to do, or the developer to do.
Thank you. Are you happy for us to move on to the your supplementary question about the impact of the dust?
Sure. So with regards to the dust end use space, as part of the Section 278 works, the highway layout will be changed to restrict the industrial traffic to Knights Road, and you'll have the more sensitive uses on Bradford Road. So as a result of those Section 278 works, you're going to significantly reduce the amount of dust that is being generated by vehicular traffic. We also consider that the mitigation measures that have been designed into the buildings, such as mechanical ventilation, non-opening windows, will further mitigate the risk of dust. As part of the environmental statement, an assessment on dust has also been undertaken and has been independently reviewed. And that assessment also considers that the mitigation measures that are being designed into buildings are sufficient to overcome the concerns that have been raised. I think it's also important to say that the environmental health objection is one that's an in-principle objection. And we responded to that within the committee report on page 58 to say that the site designated for mixed use subject to the mitigation measures that have been mentioned, that we feel that it's acceptable from a dust perspective.
Did you want to come back at all? Does that deal with your query?
It does deal with my query. What I will say, Chair, is simply because if we designate an area as someplace to build, doesn't necessarily mean as a reason of itself that we should build, especially when there are circumstances such as air quality issues. I think mitigation should be included in the future designs, which they are in this case. I just want to make it very clear, just because it says that it's been designated as a place we should build isn't reason of itself that we should build there.
I saw Blossom's hand next.
Thank you. I was going to come back on the affordable housing question specifically in relation to the mechanisms for review and to ask about grant applications. So those have been covered, which is great. I did have a question just about play space and kind of noting the overprovision of play space for younger children and underprovision for older children, and the recognition of sort of financial contribution to address that. And I wondered, while of course that is welcome, I'm reflecting on the conversation we just had around Lyle Park and almost the uncertainty of where financial contribution rather than delivery comes from. Obviously, we want to create great neighbourhoods, and as part of that, you know, teenagers are as much a part of those neighbourhoods as anyone else. So I wondered if you were able to comment on that, what's led to the decisions around the provision you put in place and where there may be any opportunity to think about or, you know, broader age of play.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, you're right, actually. What's that the committee report summarises the different types of data cases for different age groups, ranging from 0, obviously, right up to those older ages. What's been specified, I suppose, is that with respect to the 12 plus, like you say, there is that focus on lower part, that style of play. But it's not to say that consideration for the 12 plus age group is not being given in terms of the on-site spaces as well. So there are still, as part of the multitude of different public spaces provided as part of this scheme, there are still spaces designed for games, informal meeting, exercising, the likes of Clipper Place and Sunshine Walk. So it's not that teenage age groups would be excluded from those more informal play style areas. They're still going to be included as part of on-site provision. But I suppose in terms of that consideration, predominantly it's been around the contributing to lower arts and the older child sport provision would be part of those improvements to lower art.
Did you want to come back to Blossom?
I mean, so just for clarity, that financial contribution is the financial contribution.
Yes.
And that in terms of conditioning that in section 6 agreement, that would be held to an Isle Park as opposed to being able to be used for other development across the borough.
Specifically for Lyle Park.
Okay. With a focus on children. Is that's effectively what it's trying to address, isn't it?
So it's not directed towards older children as it stands, but this is sort of a summary of the terms as to what it would be directed towards, i.e. it would all go towards Lyle Park. I think as part of the further Section 106 negotiations, we could make it abundantly clear that it should be prioritised towards the older age group. If that's something
It feels to me that would be a kind of just way of dealing with the contribution, given the shortfall for that age group in what's being provided on site. If members agree.
The application includes an illustrative plan for what Lyle Park, which would include space for not space, but 12 plus children to play. So yeah, clearly that plan has still to be agreed. But exactly how the money is spent, there is an indication of how we run.
Indication is great, and I guess if we can put something in place to make sure that then comes to fruition, that's even better.
One thing, and if I may, that it strikes me that if Lyle Park is being seen as the offset, not solely the offset for different age group play, and it feels like it's very up in the air in terms of who will lead that. I'd be very interested in your view on who should lead that. I'd be very interested in your view. Because it feels quite up in the air at the moment. And while I can appreciate that in the context of a hybrid application, that it is a level of detail that perhaps we're going to run through, but it is important to the community. And I think that will be important therefore to address.
I think Lyle Park is, for us, probably the most important and exciting opportunity on this project. We very enthusiastically, our team dived into designing park and trying to come up with all sorts of ideas around sports, recreation, play. And we had to be constrained to a degree because ultimately we don't own this land. But setting aside what could be tokenistic play space in confined spaces when you've got amazing open spaces right next door, that if you have proper investment, that could be, I think, something exceptional for this area, for people, for the residents here and for everyone. We would be very happy to take a lead in this. I mean, we're very conscious it's not our land, so we don't want to be presumptuous around whether we should or we shouldn't. And we see the investment in this park, play, and acceleration of that. Even as you said, I'd absolutely love this to be completed before our first residents move in. We'd be happy to start this work very, very soon as we possibly could. But ultimately, it's not our land. We will have to go through the processes with the council. but we will put our shoulders to wheel 100%, and we'll be trying to drive this to get best possible design that meets all the requirements of kids and everybody in this area, all age groups. And we see it as critical to the success of what we're trying to achieve. But we need to get on the direction. Council, Parks Department, but it certainly won't be from any lack of effort, desire, or funding on our side that will stop this happening.
It's good to hear. I wonder whether officers think it might be possible to perhaps add in wording around that contribution, just either urging or requiring that we look at the provision of play for that older group.
With an emphasis on.
Yes, yeah, I think that would be helpful. And it's obviously very good to hear from you that that's something that you're very keen to pick up as well. I'm going to bring in Councillor Sally Pontin, and I'm going to think about moving us towards vote.
Okay, I've got one quick comment about the play space and then a comment about the number of affordable homes. I was previously the youth work manager for this area as a council officer. Young people don't go where you expect them to go. Young people prefer to be on their estate, even if they're 12 plus. So therefore, they will go and sit on the 0 to 4 play equipment if they have nowhere else more suitable for them to sit. And you're going to have to be aware that that may affect the comfort of some of your tenants who may not be used to the idea of young people sitting around chatting, which is what they mostly like to do once they're beyond a certain age. It may be lovely if you built basketball courts in Lyle Park. Okay, some will go and do that, but many will want to just sit in their local area, in their local estate, sit and chat. And so I think that's something you need to be aware of, because unlike, water or electricity flowing in the easiest route, young people don't do that. They go where they feel comfortable. Okay, so if you don't make them comfortable places deliberately for them in the development, they will use other spaces that they can make themselves feel comfortable. Okay, so that's one thing to pay attention to, please. And I'm very aware that because of the, it's 106 money, as I keep saying, it's not a gift, it's a levy that you're giving that's going to be going towards Lyle Park. It's still 150 square metres beneath the expected provision for children of that age, of the 12 pluses. So that's just a statement on my part, okay? Coming back to homes of social rent, I'm sure, like footballers preparing for a match, some of your team have been watching some of our previous YouTube videos from this committee, and you will be aware of how strongly we feel that whilst it's lovely that you're going to be building such a large number of homes within the borough, and particularly on land that up till now has not been commercially viable because of the high level of information and the flood defence is needed, that actually the majority of those private homes will be being sold to people out of the borough and therefore not alleviating the homelessness and the need for larger homes within the borough. With providing only 9.2% of affordable homes, the social rent, which is great, it's actually quite a small number of homes. As we can see, it's 153 homes, which is great. Many of them are 1 person, 2 person, 3 person, and then, and that higher number than average for this kind of development, the 4 person homes. You've got very few of the 6 person homes, which are part of the social rent. We continue meeting after meeting, and I'm sure you get this right across London as well, because we know how much the London local plan is also not being adhered to with the 50% social housing, that we continue to be dismayed and heartbroken at the idea that under our local policy H2, and again under the local plan policy H4, that developers are failing to meet the high level of social homes that are needed. I know you'll build the flats, you'll build the commercial flats, they'll be lovely, they'll be light, they'll be airy, they'll face the river, some of them, people will enjoy living there. What we don't have either at this stage is an understanding of how much the service charge will be for the people paying social rents at this location. Am I right to guess that most of these social rent properties will be in separate blocks to the other blocks? Okay, so if you're looking at lower service charges and lower rents, then our concern straight away would be for lower design values, perhaps, lower square footage. You know, this is what developers have to do, we know, to meet the needs of their shareholders and their owners. So that's a concern for us as well. The one thing I wanted to specifically ask about is something that always makes my heart drop, is non-opening windows. We understand why that's a condition of some of the properties because of the difficulty with pollution coming from outside of those properties, and this is the best way to ameliorate the internal pollution levels inside the properties. What I want to ask you here, and I would love to be reassured, is are the blocks that are the social rent blocks actually designed in the project to act as a buffer between the more polluting side of the site or the road or whatever it is that the pollution is coming from, and then act as a buffer with their non-opening windows between the pollution source and the private accommodation?
So if I can just come in just on a couple of points there. So firstly, 98 of the social rent units are provided in Block L, so it's one of the detailed phases. You've got the majority of the social rent units provided in the first phase, I think it should be.
Yeah, I understood that.
Okay, and 55, the remaining 55 are running in Block D, which forms part of phase 2. D is not only with social rent, only social rent and private units as well. In terms of the non-openable windows, all been subjected to the necessary testing and modelling to make sure that they are provided with the necessary airflow and air intake and all of those other metrics that are assessed by the council and by in here as well. In terms of the location of the non-openable windows, there are on blocks A, B, and L, and they are not cited in a way in which to mediate the kind of the distance or exposure for the other predominantly private blocks. So they're not being cited in that way. And actually, the you know, when you think about the blocks that are not blocks A, B, and L that form part of the outline phase that will be subject to reserve mass applications, they'll be subjected to this testing again as part of those submissions, part of those reserve mass applications, and will be subject to the same scrutiny as units. Part of the detailed phase will be subjected to on this initial phase as well.
I would just stress that not a design choice for us to choose to put non-opening windows into apartments. We would much rather have opening windows in all our apartments. They are actually cheaper to build, they're cheaper to run, so it's not a kind of somehow a reduction in quality by us doing this. This has been required due to the position of the industrial, and it's been required by the neighbours to the development that we have that as a design condition.
Okay, and the majority of those black blocks that do have some non-opening windows, are the apartments in those blocks dual aspect or are they single aspect?
We have a portion of there are a significant number of dual aspect units that we've put into the development.
Yeah, it's
So I can understand that with the remediation issues with the air conditioning units, I don't know what the proper phrase is for the taking out the mechanical air recovery or whatever it's called. That is more expensive, but also, as we know, those of us that work in air conditioned offices or mechanically removed offices, not necessarily as nice as opening a window. If you are there any flats that have only got non-opening windows?
Need to check that. So none of the units in the development will be single aspect. 60% will be good aspect in the detail phase with the design code. I know it's the design code have a target for 60% just select homes, but as far as I'm aware, there's no units that would rely only on the mechanical ventilation, heat recovery units, and could only be on the appropriate elevations where they are facing the industrial uses that could be agreed with the council and the document neighbours that would be not open the windows, but my understanding is none that are kind of.
Okay, thank you for that reassurance, because you can understand, I'm sure, that whilst we no longer worry so much about poor doors, we are worried about other aspects of people living in social homes having a lesser experience than the market value residents that are living there. Have you got any assurance for me, or any way which you can give us more affordable homes?
Only the measures that we've already taken, which is to essentially make a grant application to the Affordable Homes Programme. That has been submitted in line, and we're expecting in September that we'll be able to discuss with councillors what we've been awarded through that programme.
Okay, and if you are seen to need to deliver a high level of social homes, given the profit basis of what you're able to produce from this site, will you assure us that you will provide those affordable homes on site and not try and pay us to put them somewhere less pleasant?
I think the review mechanisms that we will be agreeing with the officers will mean that we will endeavour to provide as many of those homes on site rather than through community zones.
Because that's
so they are early enough in order to be able to design them into the project in order to provide them on. Clearly, the late stage review, it's not possible at the time of the late stage review that we can capture and be able to provide those homes on site.
So I think your question is, if we can improve the affordable housing through grants, then all of the affordable housing through, that is, if the affordable housing increased to the grant application, that will all be on site.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Blossom, I thought you had a comment, and then I am going to move us to the vote.
The questions in there. Firstly, I noted from the supplementary version today that I moved to around the industrial buffer, and noted the changes wording around the conditions. So I was interested in the rationale for that and whether that service and council is assurance that will be delivered. And just reflecting on the question of tenure and which tenure in which block, it just struck, I was not a material consideration, but interested in how far along you are with discussions with RPs around the management of social housing and whether they are comfortable with mixed tenure in the block you mentioned, 55 units. And then I wanted to ask just around potential officers around the financial contribution towards healthcare facilities, noting that Arab's concerns as referenced in section 938 on page 140, just around whether that financial contribution is likely to, where is that likely to be, if it is not in this development?
Should we take those ones in order? The first one was about the industrial buffer, which was a question that had occurred to me actually. Does the revised wording provide enough assurance for the committee that the industrial buffer will definitely happen?
So yeah, the short answer is yes. Our view is that the design features that have gone into the detailed phase of the development are acceptable from a agent of change perspective with regards to noise. But the industrial buffer area is still required as part of the wider master plan for the strategic site. So the section 106 obligation requires the developer to provide us with a delivery program for that buffer. And we would encourage the developer to continue discussions with us at pre-app stage to discuss what that buffer would look like and the land uses that would be within it.
Okay. It asks for reasonable endeavours to do that, not for that to be done.
So yeah, I think we are still comfortable with the amount of information that's gone into that section 106 obligation from an agent change and master plan perspective.
This was something we took legal advice on, and the reasonable endeavours approach was a position that was supported following legal review.
So it would be good to hear from the developer in terms of commitment to that and information.
The condition that was originally proposed, unfortunately, was unlawful. And so the council have taken legal advice and have provided the extent of condition that actually lawfully could be brought into place. We're now the owner of the highway, and there isn't about, but we will be bringing forward applications in order to be able to develop that land in due course.
Well, that might be the best we can do. I think was your next question about whether the registered providers were content with the mixed tenure block.
So we mentioned that there is the opportunity for the Ballymore registered provider to own and manage those blocks in the future. I think we're content that the way that the design has been made with separate cores, the separate block, that we will be able to manage that in a very effective manner.
Without excessive service charge or assumption.
And without all.
Without portals, but the tenure lines, which is what we endeavour to do.
Thank you.
And with your final question about the financial contribution to the NHS facility?
Yes.
So that contribution request has come directly from the NHS. So it's effectively there to be put into larger pots and deliver health infrastructure within the Royal Docks area. Within the local plan, there's no requirement to deliver health facilities on site. And therefore it would be down to the NHS themselves to ascertain where the health facility would be, whether or not they would build a new facility in the area or whether or not go towards improving existing facilities within the surrounding area and wider borough.
And in terms of wider Royal Docks area then, is there sufficient provision, healthcare provision in the area at the moment? Or that needs to While you're thinking about that, I mean, I guess I'm interested very generally in the mix, non-residential use of and how you see that.
So within the development, we have identified that there isn't great provision within the overall area for a larger format supermarket. So we've designed in slightly bigger, rather than more local, slightly larger format supermarket, which we've designed into the scheme. We've also had extensive conversations with officers relating to those kind of health facilities in terms of bringing. There is a wider plan.
And have you had feedback from other residents about their opinions of the current retail provision and what they perceive to be gaps?
Is moving forward. Is the supermarket, the current Sainsbury's supermarket in Royal Wharf needs stocking twice a day at the moment because it's just nowhere near big enough to vision of the actual demand, which is essentially why we are designing in that larger supermarket.
So there still is the Woolworth brand for retail as well. I think there's units available there. I think the one thing we don't want to do here is put a whole lot of brand for retail here that is competing with that. We want this to be the force or is a successful high street. We need to continue to be a successful high street. I think the additional residents here will help that become more sustainable as well. So Steve said here about the supermarket, but I think this will also reinforce the whole area and the whole.
Right, did you want to come back on the issue of the general provision of health facilities in the area?
Yeah, so in terms of the assessment within the environmental statement, the environmental statement does recognise that on occupation of this development, there will be an increased need for health facilities in the area, which is why I secured quite a substantial contribution within those terms. However, ultimately, it will be down to the NHS to decide how they distribute it.
But some of it will still need a physical location.
It will.
And by accepting the financial contribution from this development, what does that then do in terms of progress that we make because they're on development?
I think it's on a case by case basis. So in this case, the NHS have requested a certain sum based on the demand that is forecasted. So for other developments, it may be higher. For other developments, it may be
Perhaps pick this up as a kind of broader point. Maybe ask if officers could put together perhaps a short written answer to the kind of overarching question about how case-by-case decisions on NHS contributions are then added up to make sure that they add up to overall provision across an area. I feel there should be an answer to that.
There should be an answer to that, but if the answer in every single case is a financial contribution, then we will not have the space, the physical space. And therefore,
Yes, I'm going to ask officers to pick that up.
Chair, just you must have read my mind just to build on what you just said. We're going to ask the NHS on a ward basis, what does the health data tell us the vision is? And every development will take us to a level. Because at the moment, we're taking the money without any provision. So it might be on a broad basis. If the issue happens.
I think we could leave it with officers to address the question how they would like to. I am aware that we are just approaching the end of the first of 4 items, so I am going to move us on to the vote. If the members will bear with me. Are you able to share your screen, please, Dan? We have spent some time discussing this, but for an application of this size, it's quite right that we did so. The recommendation from officers is that we note the update report and we resolve to agree the reasons for approval, etc. Can I please ask those in favour to indicate? Thank you very much. And those against? I don't think there are any abstentions, but just in case. Thank you very much. That is passed. Thank you for your time today. I'm going to ask those who are leaving the room now, because they were here just for this item, to do so as quietly as you can. I'm going to press straight on to the next item. We will probably take a comfort break before this committee is over, not quite yet. Agenda item 6 then is the land at 10 to 11 Brunel Street and 36 to 48 Shirley Street. Can I ask applicants, please, if you want to come up and sit and address the committee? Thank you. Do you have a presentation to share, or did you wish to answer questions, or? Okay, no problem. Just as before, I'll set a time on my phone for 5 minutes. I'll try to give you a nod when there's just a couple of minutes left. Pauline, you have got a presentation, so we can begin whenever you're ready.
Move on to the next slide.
Can you speak louder?
Yeah. Thank you and good evening, Chair and member of the Planning Committee. The development before you tonight has evolved over a period of nearly 2 years, starting with initial site analysis and appraisals first undertaken in October 2023. Through a planning performance agreement, we've worked closely with the Council's planning, design and highways officers, as well as the design panel across 3 sessions. The collaborative pre-application process has led to significant changes and enhancements, and the scheme before you tonight reflects that input. We're really pleased that officers support the proposal as the design is strongly endorsed by the DRP. This is a significant opportunity to regenerate the underutilised and obsolete brownfield site within the Royal Docks Beckton opportunity area that is proposed to be allocated for housing in your draft new local plan. Within 3 high-quality buildings, the scheme will deliver 176 new homes for a range of user groups, including families, with a total of 35% affordable housing proposed. This includes 41 homes for social rent and 21 for shared ownership. Overall, 51 family size units are proposed, and 25 of these will be 3 and 4 bedroom units for social rent tenure. As set out in the officer's report, the proposal achieves a high level of planning policy compliance and also delivers significant economic, social and environmental benefits. These are important material considerations that should weigh heavily in favour of granting planning permission. Thank you. I'll now hand you over to Neil Deal to summarise the scheme in more detail.
Thank you, Harry. Next slide, please. The project's been designed to deliver 176 new homes in 2 blocks linked to a podium building. The buildings ascend from 11 to 12 stories from south to north to correspond to the scale of new buildings that are coming down to the north. Slide, please. Apartments are carefully arranged to optimise daylight and sunlight and to provide a good level of dual aspect accommodation. Courtyard garden is designed over 2 levels and faces southwest to pick up the afternoon and evening sun. Balconies and street frontages are generally recessed to provide privacy and comfort. Within the courtyard, the balconies are projecting over the views and additional sunlight. Next slide. This is the view from Shirley Street looking north, where the column of south-facing balconies are stacked over one of the 2 main entrances. Next slide, please. This is a view from Shirley Street looking south that shows improvements in the public realm along with the addition of gardens, defensible space, trees, and the new connection to Brunel Street is visible here on the right. Next slide, please. This view shows Brunel Street with new street trees, central front gardens, and doors activated in the street and really improve the quality of the experience on that street. It also links there through to Shirley Streets. You can see the vehicles, servicing vehicles and cars. It's a one-way street. Next slide, please. This view shows the new frontage along the west side of Shirley Street, front gardens, front doors and porch canopies, providing an animated street scene and much needed new greening. Here are a few Bay studies from the design analysis statement of the application showing the quality and the detail of this brick building. I think hopefully you can see here in the middle section we've got stacked maisonettes which improve the scale of the project towards the street and much needed new greening with front gardens on most frontages. Next slide, please. Here's just an example of one bedroom apartment. This apartment is identical in the private and the affordable. We've got a large number of windows, daylighting are very, very good, and rooms are really well proportioned.
You've got no square footage on there. What's the square footage, please? Or square metre?
All of the apartments are.
I can't hear.
They're all compliant with national space standards.
Yeah, I understand that. But what's the square meterage of an average one bedroom?
Let's look that up for you. For one bed. Up at the end of the accommodation.
Thank you.
Just get the answers.
Yes, do you want to maybe look that up,
Yeah.
or then we can come back to that when we get to questions?
I think I've been to the end.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to the optical presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, can I confirm you can see that and you can hear me okay?
Yep, all good.
Great, thank you. So this is item 6. It's the land at Brunel Street and Shirley Street. Sorry, very slow computer. This is the location of the site, just sort of south of Canning Town Station and to the west of Keir Hardie Recreation Ground. And here I've got some aerial views. These are a bit out of date from the internet, but just to give you a general sort of orientation of where the site is. So the proposal itself, it's a development consisting of the demolition of the existing buildings and the construction of 3 blocks at 4 stories, 11 stories and 12 stories to provide 176 residential units and the associated landscaping and wider public realm improvements. So I've got some visuals here, but the applicants already showed you these, so I'll skip right through them. So in terms of consultation, we sent out 955 letters. We had 13 responses, 1 in support and 12 objections. So I've just summarised the objections here, but this is obviously in more detail in the report and responded to in the various sections of the report. So the key planning considerations on this one are the principle of development, affordable housing and housing mix, heritage and design, impact upon neighbouring amenity, open and play space, transport and travel, and then finally the reasons for approval. So begin with the principle of development. This site is an allocated site in the draft local plan for residential development, industrial and employment uses, as well as town centre uses and an open space. So it is a brownfield site. This is exactly the kind of site we want to see redeveloped into residential. So the principle of that is very much supported. The existing employment uses on site, they are vacant, they're not in use and they're not in a very good state of repair. So there are no objections to their loss. So the principal development is considered acceptable. So turning on to master plan, so I just mentioned the draft local plan has this site as a allocated site. This is taken from the draft local plan, just to put that in context. It does cover 2 sites, so that the site's split. So with a bit of PowerPoint magic, I can show you item 6 today, this one, and item 7, the next item, is actually immediately adjacent. So whilst the site allocation covers that entire site, what we're assessing here is just the area in item 6. But when we were at the pre-app stage, we did have some joint pre-application advice meetings between both developers to make sure that they were working in a kind of joined up approach, and in particular to assess the impacts of daylight and sunlight in a cumulative approach if both applications are approved. So moving on to affordable housing, local plan policy sets a target of 35% affordable housing in Canning Town, with an even split of social rented and intermediate homes. I'm happy to say that this application would achieve that 35%. The tenure split would be 66% social rented, so it's not an even split as required by policy, but it favours social rented, which is a priority for the borough, so this isn't something that we object to. The financial viability assessment has been reviewed by Quintic, and they agree that this represents the maximum affordable feasible on site. In terms of housing mix, 29% of the proposed housing would be family sized. That does fall short of the 39% targets, but again, this has been supported by the FEA. Within development, most of the social rented homes are family sized, so we do welcome that, and we do consider the affordable housing offer and housing mix to be acceptable. Moving on to heritage, the application has been reviewed by Historic England. There is no objections, but it's just the usual set of conditions for a WSI. In terms of design, as the applicant mentioned, this has been presented to DRP on several occasions and has been changed throughout the process. A large part of that change came from these joint application, pre-application meetings that I discussed earlier to sort of address daylight and sunlight, and I'll touch on that in a bit. The overall scale and massing of development is considered to be acceptable. The height is taller than what we had envisaged in the local plan allocations. However, in the context of Canning Town, there are lots of tall developments in the area, and in conjunction with the high level of affordable housing, we do consider it to be acceptable in this instance. The architecture and the detailed design is considered to be of high quality, and the proposal would include improvements such as greenery and new trees on Shirley Street. So overall, the design of the development is considered to be acceptable. Moving on to neighbouring amenity impacts. So a daylight and sunlight assessment was submitted. So the diagram on the left there, the orange buildings are all of the buildings that were assessed in terms of daylight and sunlight. And it did include the cumulative impacts of the next item as well. So as I mentioned, during the course of pre-application, we emphasised one of the key factors we wanted to avoid was any impact on the courtyard to the sphere. So that's the first red arrow. That's the sort of open courtyard amenity space for that building, and we thought it was very important that that was not unduly impacted. The changes that we saw have addressed that now, so it does meet guidance. The most prevalent impacts would be on Jupiter House, which is the second arrow, just to the east. There are some impacts in the area, particularly the way that daylight and sunlight works. It assesses what a unit or flat receives now and then compares it to what would happen if you built up. So naturally, when you put a tall building where there are no buildings now, it sort of emphasizes that impact. But the daylight and sunlight guidance, BRE guidance, is just guidance, and it is very clear in that guidance that you shouldn't use it as a sort of mathematical yes or no. So in this kind of development in a high density area, we do consider the impacts are to be acceptable. Similarly, the impacts on privacy and outlook are considered acceptable. The buildings fully sort of established road widths and distances between them. So in terms of privacy and outlook, there is no real impact that we consider to be unacceptable. For the limited harm that we do identify, we consider it's been balanced against a high proportion of affordable housing, and that would outweigh this harm. So on balance, the impacts on amenity are considered acceptable. Moving on to open and play space. So the draft local plan envisaged a contribution towards open space on site is split across the entire master plan. So I suppose one thing to point out here is, in an ideal world, we would have had one developer for the entire master plan site come forward with one big residential development. But in effect, what we're working with here is half of the site. So we did discuss the provision of an open space on the site, but it felt that it would be either just tokenistic or just very difficult without compromising the amount of housing and social housing on site. So we do acknowledge that in this case it does fall short. However, we don't note that it's in very close proximity to Keir Hardie. This is moving slightly on to play space now. So there is a shortfall in play space on the site for pretty much the same reasons. The walking distance Keir Hardie is around, I think, 4 minutes. It's very close. And the applicant agreed to a Section 106 obligation to provide at their expense improvements to the route. So the route I've highlighted in blue, what those improvements will be is yet to be established. They'll work with our highways team. As part of the obligation, they'll need to have that agreed before they can commence the works on site. And it would be at their expense. So on balance, we consider that, considering the high level of housing and affordable housing, this is a good compromise and it is a good mitigation. So on balance, we consider that acceptable. Move on to transport. So one of the big changes to this will be the change at the end of Brunel Street. This is currently quite an unattractive dead-end road. And as part of the proposals, this will be opened up into a one-way system and improved in that area. It's supported by the transport officers, along with a number of improvements made by Section 278. The proposal would be car-free other than blue badge, and it does meet the cycle space standards. And as part of those agreements, there would be traffic control measures to prevent that becoming a rat run. So as part of our transport discussions, we did consult TfL, and their response, they requested a financial contribution of 250,000 towards improvements to Canning Town Station. And they also requested for a pedestrian crossing opposite the site on Siltown Way, which I've just highlighted there in yellow. So this was reviewed by the applicants, and they provide a response from their transport consultants. They noticed that the contribution being asked for didn't seem proportionate compared to other developments. So the example they gave was Crown Wharf, which paid 150,000 to TfL and provided 871 units. So it's substantially larger, but paid less. So based on that, they've made an offer of 31,000 to be more consistent. And they also note that the existence of 2 crossings on Siltown Way, which are close to the site. So I've just highlighted there from Google Street View, the green box. Hopefully that's quite visible to you, but it's in very close walking distance to the site. So we reviewed that. We reviewed TfL's request and the response given by the applicant. We did send that response to TfL, but at the time of writing, there's been no response back from them. We do acknowledge that the scheme is currently unviable, so it is in a deficit. This is after providing a high level of affordable housing and the other financial contributions which are secured by policies, such as the quite large contribution towards local employment and carbon offset. So if we were to force the applicant to pay this 250,000, it would have potential to impact the affordable housing levels, which are a priority for the borough, as I'm sure everyone is aware. So in this instance, we've decided that to prioritise the local benefits when it comes to the transport and highways, and those were the improvements to the park, which I referred to earlier. We consider that to be a priority in this case because it provides a very direct benefit to the scheme, helps mitigate some of the issues we had. And the applicant is still offering the 31,000, which we have secured towards TfL to use towards Canning Town or a crossing as they see fit. So on balance, we have accepted that position and consider it to be acceptable. So to conclude, the proposal would have a substantial contribution towards housing and affordable housing to the borough stocks. It's considered to be of a good design. The impacts on neighbouring community are relatively low harm and are considered to be outweighed by the significant contribution towards affordable housing. And we have secured a number of external improvements, such as the route to the park and greening on Shirley Street. So on balance, we consider the proposal to be acceptable and they're recommending it for approval. And the committee is therefore asked to follow the recommendation on screen now. Thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much. Members, questions or comments? Councillor Morris.
So I guess my first comment is I do think officers made the right priority in focusing on social housing, the proportion of social housing. I think they made the right call. I guess my question, well, it's two questions. So I know the following item is the site which is right next to this one. And I just wanted to know what, perhaps this is a question for Toby Johnson. How do these two designs relate to one another and how do they impact each other? And my second question is, I wonder whether there's an opportunity to get a contribution from both these applications for that extra crossing. I do feel as if that we can't have enough crossings, and certainly in terms of prioritising pedestrians. And I shouldn't think that the amount contribute to that extra crossing would be significant, especially spread across two applications and two sites.
Thank you. So that first question about how the two designs relate to each other, is that something that you wanted to tackle first, or shall I bring in Toby?
Yeah, I'm happy to quickly touch on that. So we did have a few joint pre-apps between both sites, and you're right, we did want to make sure that that linkage between the sites was one that works together. So I'm not 100% familiar with the adjacent site off the top of my head, but I think that middle section where they join is mostly sort of green space to sort of give a softened edge to it. It was definitely a key topic that came up in design, but I think, yeah, Toby can probably talk a little bit more to that because he would have been to DRP on both sites as well.
Toby, could I bring you in on this issue about how the two sites interact with each other?
Generally, the process through the DRP was very constructive with both sites. I think the two main issues that they needed to collaborate on was the daylight impact on the sphere, that both sites reduced the massing in order to ensure that the daylighting met the sort of BRE standards for the open space. And the other was how to safeguard the center of the block, which on one side, on the hotel side, was primarily car park, and on the Brunel Street side, the Shirley Street side, was the communal amenity space. So I think through the discussions, the quantum of parking was reduced, the quantum of landscaping along the boundary condition was increased, and there's a ground floor and a first floor amenity space that links in with that green edge. And I think the sort of the final detail is to make sure that that is a landscape boundary rather than just a sort of utilitarian fence, and I think that's been taken on board by both applicants and will hopefully be secured through sort of detailed conditions. But generally, we're sort of happy the way that the two sites are now working together.
That's really helpful, thank you. And John's final question was about the desirability of the suggested new crossing that TfL suggested, and a question about whether both sites could contribute towards it to make that happen. Liam?
Yeah, so I'm sure Dan will present his scheme soon, and I believe there is a financial contribution on that scheme as well. I'm not familiar what the final figure was on that. I suppose the issue with this site in particular is because it's residential and there's a viability aspect to it. We always have to sort of balance that pot of money. So whether that money is the same on both sites kind of depends on what scheme each one is doing, and how reasonable it is to provide that. What I don't really have is a figure of how much a crossing would be. We discussed with our transport team originally about providing sort of 30 grand each to get the crossing in place, but what they informed us was they don't know what type of crossing is needed there. So that would require a feasibility study, which may cost sort of £30,000 anyway. So what we took is the decision to let TfL make that decision if they want to put that money towards feasibility of a crossing. That's fine. If they'd rather use it towards Canning Town, then that's their prerogative.
So the decision about where to allocate those funds would sit with TfL who get the contribution, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, well, could I perhaps ask then on behalf of the committee officers to take away our concern about the idea of crossing? I have to admit, when you see the design from above, when you see the pictures, you just know that most people are going to try and chance their arm across it. But people cross, they need to cross, and they do so with a degree of safety that the facilities allow them. So perhaps if we could get you to take that back, particularly perhaps given that this is a residential development, and so people are going to be living here and nipping across the road if there's a gap in the traffic, and we really want to move around safely.
If it provides a little bit of comfort, Council, we've also we're in very early discussions on the limo site. The proposed Brunel Street Bridge would be on the other side of that crossing. It's still very early stages, but we're looking at perhaps securing it as part of that development instead. In this case, it was very much focusing on that route to the park as the sort of priority for all highways improvements on this one.
That's reassuring, thank you. Councillor Scarlett-Fontaine.
Thank you very much, Chair. We're very pleased to see the high number of social and affordable homes being offered within this development, and that the majority of the social homes are of family size, so that's really good to see, and it's a welcome break not to have to upgrade developers on the percentage that's available. Having said that, it's very high density, and there's two phrases used within the report here: lacking play space and fall short of required play space for the 5+ and the 12+. Now, it's great that you're 25 square metres over on your provision for the under 5s, but as we know, children will play in their place of living first before they choose to go to yet another council park, which you're expecting to do the heavy lifting for the 5+. Is there any way in which you can incorporate a higher level of social play space for the 5+ and the 12+ in the scheme, please? Because I'm not happy with this.
I think in terms of the
could you please speak up?
In terms of the play space that's being delivered on site, you're right, so we provide all of the younger age groups on site, and we're proposing that the younger age groups would provide from Hardy Park. Hence why we spent quite a lot of time with officers talking about how do we create an improved kind of link to that facility to make sure that it can actually be used. I think, to be honest, it's a bit of a balance with having to obviously provide amenity space, complementary space, outdoor space for residents, etc. I'm not wanting to feel impact or kind of external space display space. So we've tried to kind of have a balance basis, just not all place, but also it's for other people to kind of enjoy as well. I think one point we'd probably like to make is that the improvements of Shirley Street and Brunel Street would mean that there's going to be landscape and there's going to be paved, so the kind of the end environment is very different from what development is constructed. There's going to be kind of meaningful public realm, which will provide opportunities for more informal play. So whilst we can't designate it as formal play space in planning terms, it may be used as kind of more informal play for younger age groups.
Okay, I can understand what you're saying, but it doesn't answer what I'm asking. We're very aware that in the lovely architectural drawings that we have with all that lovely greenery, trees, expensive greening of the space, that doesn't actually give any guarantee of what will be put in place, whether you're just going to put cherry lava everywhere and it's going to be particularly ubiquitous and not really pleasant to be around. Is there any way in which, considering that, as I quote again, fall short of required and lacking when it comes to play space, that we can get some kind of condition that the actual soft landscaping will be of the highest quality as shown in the illustrations.
I might ask officers to address that. Liam, are you content that the conditions set high requirements for the quality of the soft landscape?
Yes, that's correct. So condition 10 requires a place-based strategy to be submitted to the council and approved after permission, along with the usual landscape conditions as well. So that is something that we would look at that stage.
Includes planting and trees.
Yeah, planting and trees. So the landscaping plans for the on-site part will be, again, details approved at a later stage. For the kind of improvements just outside along Shirley Street, that would form part of the section 278 agreement I mentioned earlier. So that would need to be agreed with our highways team. But that was a key point during the design process, is in particular to green up Shirley Street. So yeah, that would be both elements would be covered by sort of post-decision.
Can I just also respond to the concern that Matt has raised and ask officers to take away? Obviously, we're in a peculiar position because we've just seen 2 applications back to back, which have some common features in terms of the shortfall in provided play space, in terms of looking to use a local park as part of the green space. And I guess it would just be worth perhaps flagging up to officers thinking about future applications about the importance of green space, open space and play space, and that being on site wherever possible.
Because as we've, not just today, as we've seen over the last 4 years, we have developer after developer coming and saying the same thing, which is understandable. But our parks are there already catering to the large number of people that live in the borough, and then the larger number that we're encouraging into the borough through particularly the commercial schemes which are being approved is going to completely outweigh the ability of our human spaces to cope.
Thank you. Were there further comments or questions from members, please? Blossom.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask about viability. So it sounds as though both the applicant report and the officer assessment of viability suggests that there's a deficit in the scheme. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we submitted a viability assessment. 35% of housing beyond the viable, and that's been reviewed by the council's third party consultant. The MB Paribas to agree with that. So yeah, 35% and beyond what's actually viable, and there is a deficit. Yeah.
So if that is the case, how can this committee be assured that this is going to be built? How are we going to put the deficit?
So in terms of the kind of the deliverability, I think it's kind of been taking a kind of long-term view on things. Also the applicant with the site is quite a lot of area control of the site now. So there's the ability to kind of control that and create that development program. So we've already got a fair construction plan with this proposed with the planning. So yeah, we're confident it's deliverable despite deficit.
Okay, so can you talk me through that phasing plan then, and when you're expecting to be able to commence on site? And then I guess a question for officers will be, what are we able to do in condition terms to expiry of the planning permission, if granted, will be when, if it was not developed?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, so that agreement, that is practice kind of failing lapses, factor, competition in practice, like, and how we're going to kind of develop the site. Phase 1 would be demolition of existing structures, and obviously the form built as well. So we need to kind of prepare the site for development. So that would be phase 1. So it's kind of practically looking ahead to how we do that. But it doesn't apply to viability. I'm just saying
Harry, I can actually take this call. Hi there, everyone. James Cope, representing the developer. We've invested quite considerable amount of time and money into the site, and so really for us, it is not a viable option to have this site sat undeveloped. Whilst of course the viability study does show a deficit, we're currently in an economic environment where our construction costs are high and our values are low. But for us, The objective here is to build this site out, and if we have to hold those units for an extended period, so be it. If we have to crystallize a loss, that again, it will be something that will be a small pain for us, but we are a commercial entity and we have to keep churning our capital. So this is something that we will drive forward, and we intend to deliver this.
Thank you. I think that was your, did you have further questions, Lawson?
I suppose my other question was just around the loss of independence. So just clarity of whether it is vacant or not. There's a car which is that on the site or adjacent to the site?
So the
Adjacent.
the site is currently fully vacant. It was previously used as a builder's yard, plus some smaller derelict buildings and also a former dance school. So Poly Construction, they last occupied the site, but they left in September 25. But they relocated to another site in Newham. There was no kind of network employment with Newham. They just relocated. But obviously all of the kind of existing units are empty now.
Okay. Further questions or comments from members, please? Just double checking. I think that mine have been dealt with already. In which case, sorry, Blossom, we have a look at someone who might want to come back.
I do. It's just and we've talked about this in the assumption in section 126 around daylight with sunlight and bedrooms. It's not really a question in terms of this application specifically, but we've been here before in terms of accepting a lower level of light on the basis that it's a bedroom, recognising that much of the world has changed, many people work from home, and don't necessarily have choices around whether that's working or the living space. So it would be complete really to consider that acceptable.
Perhaps if we haven't agreed it already, perhaps we could flag that up to planning policy as being something that we need to feed into future consideration of daylight and sunlight impacts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could I please ask Liam that you share your screen with the Office of Recommendation, please?
Yes.
The recommendation for us is to agree the reasons for approval as set out in this report, etc. Can I please ask those in favour to vote? And I can see that is unanimous and that is passed. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Right, it's 8:10. We've done 2 out of 4 items. Do we push on and do another one, or would you prefer a comfort break? I can see some faces that are indicating a comfort break. It's 8:09. I'm going to suggest that we reconvene at 8:15. That's 8:15. Thank you.
We need to
All back online? Lovely, thank you. Welcome back to the Strategic Development Committee. We've just had a short adjournment for a comfort break. We are now on agenda item 7, which is the Holiday Inn Express 1 to 3 Silvertown Way. As before, the applicants are here to talk to us. You can have up to 5 minutes. Did you have a presentation that you wanted to give? No problem. As before, I'll set a timer on my phone and I will try to catch your eye and indicate when you just have 2 minutes left. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm Ellie Cannon, the planning agent, speaking on behalf of the applicant. I'm joined here with the architect Ross Hamilton, who's here to help answer questions. The application before you seeks approval for the refurbishment, external upgrade and extension of an existing successful hotel in Canning Town. It will provide additional visitor accommodation in a sustainable and accessible location in Canning Town District Centre and the Royal Docks and Vector Riverside Opportunity Area where visitor accommodation is supported. The existing hotel attracts significant business and is often operating at maximum capacity. It is popular with a variety of visitors, including those travelling for business, due to its proximity to facilities such as London City Airport, the ExCeL Exhibition Centre, the O2, Canary Wharf and the City of London. The proposals therefore seek to support and expand the established business, delivering 153 new hotel bedrooms to meet existing demand. As set out in the committee report, officers support the proposals which will make a positive contribution to the vitality and viability of Canning Town District Centre. The proposals are the culmination of a design-led process guided by extensive pre-application engagement with Newham officers, the design review panel and local stakeholders, which began in November 2023. The applicant has also engaged closely with the adjoining north side, as members just heard, to ensure a coordinated and neighbourly approach to development. Throughout this process, the scheme has evolved significantly to ensure it responds positively to site constraints and achieves an excellent quality of design. Officers have recommended that the reasons for approval are agreed, and I would like to briefly highlight the key social, economic and environmental benefits the scheme will deliver. Firstly, the expansion of the existing hotel will secure the growth of the visitor economy in Canning Town and the wider opportunity area, reinforcing its regionally significant economic role. The scheme will also generate on-site construction and operational jobs alongside increased visitor spend, business rates and community infrastructure levy contributions towards Newham's infrastructure. Secondly, the proposals support the enhancement of visual amenity through external improvements to the existing building, complemented by an extensive landscape and public realm strategy. The introduction of new planting will significantly contribute to the urban greening of Silvertown Way. Existing cover and soft and permeable landscaping 3% to 55% at ground level. The scheme will also deliver a significant biodiversity net gain well in excess of the 10% legal requirement. Finally, the proposals also support the transition to sustainable transport through a substantial reduction in on-site car parking, improvements to the pedestrian environment and new cycle parking infrastructure. The development also incorporates energy efficient and renewable technology, including photovoltaic panels and air source heat pumps to improve the environmental performance of the hotel and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. To conclude, we would like to thank officers for their positive and constructive engagement throughout the pre-application process, and we respectfully ask members to support the officers' recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will move straight on to the officer presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this presentation addresses the full application for Holiday Inn Express. Site is outlined in red, in rectangular shape and occupied by a 5-storey hotel building. You'll see to the north on the blue line is the Shirley Street application, which you just had the application for. So those two sites combine a site location. So today we're focusing on this application, white and focuses on outline in red. So it's currently a 136-room hotel, and it's in an area where there's been a significant amount of transformative regeneration on and around adjacent this site. Surrounding sites uses are generally mixed use in character and include various residential and commercial uses, including hotels. Height generally range from 8 to 26 stories in the immediate locality, stepping down to the east. It's not a conservation area and there's not any listed buildings, but there are heritage assets in the locality, including the Grade II church of St. Highway there. So this application seeks to partly demolish the existing hotel to create a new site extension, 10 stories in height. The resulting hotel would have 273 rooms, which is an uplift of 136 rooms, 137 actually. And the proposal will create a new reception and new lifts to serve all floors of the building and new accessible rooms. There'll be enlarged restaurant facilities and a new bar area with active frontages to the street. And the landscape proposal will create new garden areas and spaces that the hotel ground floor can open out to and reconfigure access into the site. So it's just some images to back up. Some key visuals from Silvertown Way showing the elevation, which you see contrasts quite significantly from the existing arrangement. The other images, one approach from the north of Silvertown Way and one approach from Jude Street. This is an existing image looking down Silvertown Way, and you can see, maybe just about here, it's quite small, the existing 5-storey building. And the next image is a visualization showing it with the development. So you can see the scale in relation to the existing context. The existing access on site from Brunel Street will be removed and reinstated as footway, and the existing pick-up and drop-off from the front of the hotel will be removed as part of the wider public realm property. There'll be new public seating dividing the Silvertown Way and on Turner Street alongside flowering plants, hedgerows, trees at ground level. The main vehicle access will be from Shirley Street, widened to incorporate a Covenant-style crossing, and parking and servicing will be consolidated to the rear, with a reduction in car parking from 55 spaces today to 11 in the future when planning permission is granted, and 5 of those spaces would be accessible bays. As you can see, green infrastructure will be provided on all boundaries and also the green roof. So the summary, consolidated application sent 397 letters, and there were 4 responses, which were 4 objections. The main issues that arose related to the scale and mass of the scheme, amenity impacts, particularly focusing on outlook, daylight and sun visibility, and other issues highlighted on the screen there. In terms of the key planning considerations, that's listed in the report, but the one I focus on here are related to principal development, principal tall building, design, heritage, amenity, and transport and travel mitigations. So in terms of principal development, well, there is an established hotel already on site, so the principal development is very much established. This is very much about the intensification of that use and the upgrade to the hotel building and what it contributes to the street scene. And officers are satisfied that the scheme contributes towards objectives of the opportunity area, as there is evidence of demand, hotel demand in the area, and it's the main town centre use which is supported. Just moving on in terms of the height of the building, tall buildings are supported in town centres, and the height of the building is deemed to be acceptable here, and within the height context in the emerging local plan. Image here shows the height of development in the local context. As you can see, it's much lower than surrounding buildings and not excessive in the local context. In terms of design, the proposal was subject to design review panel and the chair's review involved in response to feedback for the design review process. The massing was involved and the wider site has been comprehensively redesigned to improve the setting of the existing hotel building new extension, but also with regard to the Shirley Street site adjacent to make it a much more comprehensive piece of cityscape and streetscape too as well. Development, I've said, is in the setting of the Church of St Luke, which is a listed building. And this is an image which you'll see if you very closely look. The outline in green is the outline of where the development is. This is a view from Kirkcaldy Park as well. So this imagery is to demonstrate that the scheme's not going to harm the setting of this building or any other heritage assets, and for that reason, the design of the scheme is supported. In terms of daylight, there was some conversation about that in the earlier item. Proposed building has been designed to minimise the loss of privacy and also daylight to existing properties, and will retain existing properties around the development will retain a good standard of daylight in dwellings, as with the amenity spaces included in the sphere. So for that reason, offers are satisfied that development on its own and its cumulative impact is acceptable. In terms of transport and travel, I said the scheme will result in a reduction in car parking spaces on the site and an uplift in cycle parking to London policy levels. Given the good access to Canning Town Station and wide range of bus routes, officers are satisfied that the development will result in fewer journeys being made by cars to the site. There was a discussion earlier on about contribution towards feasibility for improvements in connectivity across Silvertown Way, and the applicant has agreed to contribution which will be secured by legal agreement, which will contribute towards not just the feasibility study, but capital works as well to mitigate the impact of the scheme. So just blue, in terms of heads of terms, applicants agreed heads of terms, contributions towards employment and training, highways, paying architect, and sustainability in terms of carbon offset contribution. And so these would mitigate the impacts of the scheme. So members are resolved to agree the recommendations are set out on.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move to questions or comments from members. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you to the officer. I'm looking at the comment from the counter-terrorism security advice, especially regarding the issues of mass and height. It says here, the applicant not had any contact with the counter-terror office. Therefore, on what basis are we approving this application?
What page is that, please, Terry?
Page 343, 343. The implications are, it could be agreed an application today, and the terror office not back for security considerations. So therefore, I'm not clear as to, well, maybe the applicant might like to comment what I've just said, but I'm unclear on the application which we are due to sign today.
So when we received that comment from Met Police, we engaged with them and went back to Met Police to talk about what it is they wanted to be covered and whether actually it's the right stage in the planning process to deal with those issues. What we did is we spoke with them and proposed a condition, which we've got, which I can pull up in the act here, which is secured by design condition. Require us to go back to Met Police and then on next stage of detailed design, make sure that any kind of issues that can happen, which I don't think they will, but give another opportunity to resolve those, which is consistent with others, that the same stage which doesn't engage other.
So the application could change?
No, we don't think it's going to change. I think it's fair to say that the level of engagement that counter-terrorism want to have is not happening at this stage or the next stage, but there has been engagement in the security design issues. The scale of the building will change. This is more a belt and braces job.
Let me ask it the other way. What could they change? What could they change? What could, due to the location and the end use and the height of the building? So those are three areas. Well, they could come back and make specific comments because of its location, its end use, and its height, which could fundamentally change the application plan.
Well, if I just go back, just to give some assurance, maybe to this. Oh, I'm not
and the reason why I'm asking that, I accept the application as there it is, but at some point, if they come back and say, no, the aspect is wrong, the height's wrong, you know, this could be a sniper risk or whatever, we're not having a design, then obviously the design will change, right?
So, I'll tell you why I'm quite confident about that height won't be an issue. So, here we go here. So, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Oops, let it load up. So, my cursor, so we go down. not being very, so the
Appreciate
the red
what you're saying, but you're not counter terror, are you? You're the Met Police counter-terrorism security office who has the pen on this. I'm just trying to get some assurance.
So the assurance I give you is that there's a hotel on this site.
Yeah.
And there will still be a hotel on this site. So we're confident that in terms of the land use, there aren't any new issues that this scheme will introduce.
Okay.
In terms of the height, this building is taller than the existing building, but it's much lower than the surrounding buildings, which are in the current context. If I go back to the initial slide at the very beginning, just to show what's that's the one.
Have you got a sight line drawing from here to the GLA building?
Well, I don't have that with me, but in terms of just the height of the surrounding building, it's higher than this building. So we don't, for example, think that height would be a reason for, council to have an issue because of the established heights of other buildings. So I think for them it's more of a procedural thing, and they were happy in terms of process of those councillor times would be involved, that to be a next detailed design stage. So that.
And in terms of, in the unlikely event that something fundamental did come up, presumably the process then would be, our condition is that secure by design needs to be met. And if it couldn't be met within the terms of this outline, this permission, then the applicant would need to come back with amendments.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Young.
Can I just press on the timing of that? So I think on page 344, the office claims suggests that details can be provided post commencement, but you're saying you're conditioning it for detailed design phase.
Right, perfect, yeah.
Executed by design. Condition 30, page 409, requires prior to first occupation. So before occupying building, they would need to have that necessary letter from the Metropolitan Police Design and Crime Officer stating that all appropriate measures have been met.
That's not the same as detailed design stage. That's
no,
occupation, so which is it?
You would have the detailed design of the building that you're going to build done before you build it.
Yes, but you're conditioning it prior to occupation, prior to presence.
So what we're saying is you can commence a development, that will be okay, but you can't occupy the building. So just the part one of that condition, just to kind of go to that, explicitly requires approval or consultation with the Met Police designing out team. So what implicit in that, and maybe isn't very clear, is that the applicant will need to engage with the Met Police design team, have to incorporate their measures, and then come back to us almost with a letter to show that actually they've engaged with them on the principles that are important for secure by design. The police will say they're happy with them, and it's only when we have that would we approve their details here.
I had a question for the applicant, which is more of a kind of general one. I definitely hear what you say about the demand for hotel use and about the attractions and about the occupation rates of the existing hotel. But I'm always interested thinking about these hotel applications in terms of what it's like to be a neighbour to them, what it's like to live in an area that has a lot of hotels. And I wondered if you could tell me a bit about your relationships with your neighbours, with the existing residential developments around you, and in terms of what the kind of benefits to someone living very close by to this will be.
I guess kind of just to come off the first bit about the relationship with the neighbours, I guess this scheme's got quite a wide package of benefits integrated into it, with the kind of landscape improvements to Silvertown Way, the frontage along that's going to be open and green, and it's going to also extend up Brunel Street. So just kind of generally, it's going to improve the visual amenity of the local area, which is a benefit to local residents. They can use it, they can also come into the hotel. I guess family members would stay in the hotel as well. On kind of the hotel need point, we have submitted with the application a hotel needs assessment, and officers have kind of reviewed that, and they agree with the methodology and consider it robust, and that's prepared by our economics team. So hopefully kind of on that basis kind of demonstrates there is a need for the hotel, and kind of the wide benefits of improving what is an existing hotel. It's not the most attractive building at the moment. We really want to deliver those improvements for local residents as well.
I will come to you in a minute. Following on from that point about the attractive building, I wondered if I could bring Toby in. I'm curious to hear Toby's views on some of the kind of architectural detail and design. It may just be a feature of the images that we saw, but some of the images from the presentation did look a little bit austere.
I think we had a very sort of productive process with the applicants. I think it's worth recalling that the existing building is a bit of an eyesore, and therefore this development is an opportunity to substantially upgrade both the architecture and the landscaping to this site. They put forward a I think it was a terracotta rain screen with a sort of horizontal emphasis, which we felt was working well. I think they were looking at a number of colours, and I think the sort of colour that they've gone with isn't sort of doing itself justice in the images. It looks a bit muddy, but I think the samples we saw had a sort of a bit more life to them, a bit more in the green, and I'm sure that's something that the applicant can continue to sort of look at. But generally, we felt that the sort of combination of the new architecture and the new landscape was working very well, and the architectural sort of strong architectural idea was linking the new and the old in a way that worked quite successfully. So we feel if the colour of that cladding can be got right, I think it'll become an asset for Silvertown Way.
That's very helpful, thank you. Madeline?
Toby, you've taken the words straight out of my mouth. It is a bit of an eyesore. I just wanted to check the architect didn't design the original structure before I go any further.
No,
I've actually thought for years it was a demountable, because it looks like it should be the piled up porter cabins sort of a builders in the midst of construction. I was wondering whether where particularly the orange cladding, not the orange cladding, sorry, the grey cladding really sticks out now on Silvertown Way, which, as we know, is an area that does need a lot of greening, and because it is very high density. But the majority of buildings on Silvertown Way have got brick fascias, as opposed to the very plastic-looking grey fascia to the building. On the images we've seen, the extension appears to be very much being fronted with the same type of panelling, and there doesn't seem to be any change on the building as shown.
Yes, the intent is that it's a metal clad building. We did look at other options on the way through, but it's felt the fact that we are different use to the typical residential around it. There's a distinction there. We have connected that to the kind of heritage of the area of the industrial buildings, using that metal material, but using it in a very kind of modern way with the introduction of the colour. The accent element of using the curved corner, the link, the lower, longer form, and the taller, shorter form, so that they're distinguished but yet linked. And then the quality of the material, the metal allows us to do long, then horizontal flat line, accentuate that rhythm.
You're getting overexcited, sir.
I'm sorry, but it's a very varied material. See the detail stacks through fine grain, lower, higher grain, and then on the top it becomes very transparent. Using that material to its finest.
Okay, and noticed in the presentation that we've got the document here, it says subject to conditions, materials to be presented, so that's not been agreed on yet?
That's a normal condition, just almost to say, what's available.
Yeah, exactly. I understand. But if there is I did notice your curved corners, very Montessori, very lovely, and also I'm sure that the the designing out prime team will be pleased to have some nice curved corners for people not to hide behind. So that was nice to see, but yeah, it does look incongruous to the area now. Perhaps when it was built, that reference to the original industrial nature of the sites and the bonded warehouses and the, maybe some of the railway sidings and sheds and things may have been important, but I think that heritage language is now lost, given the local buildings that are now there, which now, as I said, mostly have the brick frontages. I mean, the Sphere has got, for some strange reason, the orange and grey going around it, but the EFRA building and the other buildings, I didn't notice all the names, but I happen to know that one, are very much within a different design language. And I think if there's some way in which it could be made to not stick out like a sore thumb quite so much, that would be great. I know that you're at a later stage of design. That's my only point for this one.
Thank you. Were there any further comments or questions? Blossom.
Can I just reflect on some of the transport comments that have been made, both by the borough's officers and Transport for London, and in particular, I wondered if you'd through the rationale of retention of non-blue badge parking spaces, recognising that it's a significant reduction. And also I noted the other comments in relation to cycle for hire scheme, and I'm reflecting on comments Betsy Morris made last time about micromobility and how that fits with what happens around that. And then thirdly, we've discussed in the previous application the need for a pedestrian crossing at this site, adjacent to the site, rather than the road. But so just wondered if you could talk us through the transport approach overall, but just reflection on those.
I suppose as existing, the site, familiar with it, it's got about 55 car parking spaces. And there's kind of a big opportunity there. It's a lot of hard standing, but there's a big opportunity to kind of reduce that provision, obviously support that transition to more sustainable motor transport, noting the location. But obviously retaining kind of blue badge parking is quite an important element of that. And we felt that we're meeting policy requirements for that in line with the London plan. So we've got 5 disabled bays and 6 standard, I think that's right, standard from the top of my head. So it's obviously a significant reduction, and overall it's going to reduce our trips to the site, which will have a broader impact, positive impact on the surrounding network. Sorry, could you remind me on the second point?
I guess my question is, why do we still need 6 standard beds? And has there, if they are needed, consideration of EV charging for them?
Yeah, that's reasonable. So it's mainly the operational requirements that obviously the hotel is taking a big hit, losing 45 spaces overall. So those are needed for the guests, and obviously if disabled people are coming to the hotel, they have additional requirements where they will likely need to travel by car.
I'm not using the blue badge space.
Okay, sorry. Yes, fine. Okay. Well, I think it just seems reasonable in light of kind of the reduction that has been made to keep those on site. Can't really kind of talk about too much more, but yeah.
And a hotel of the size has quite a few operational requirements, so people coming to fix boilers, check things on roofs or the like, so there'll be a turnover of access car parking, allowing the blue badge to stay clear for appropriate use and run, filled up with wood and more people going into the hotel for longer than a typical drop.
And the just to go back to the EV charging point, the applicant is happy to deliver that. It's just that it kind of comes into play at building reg stage. So that would be one EV charging space will be on site. I think it's 20% passive provision. So we will be kind of exploring that as well.
And the question about cycle hire or other,
I think that would be a question for businesses. Yeah.
Then is it being provided on site or not?
So we can see there's a request from TfL
Yes.
for financial contribution to the cycle hire scheme. There was a point in an application that we considered last week around whether that should be the TfL cycle hire schemes, or whether, given where the borough is around provision of micromobility, or working with operators around that, whether there is an opportunity to vary that, but I'm not sure whether that's, the Council Morris will have insights to that.
In terms of my mobility point, I'm not necessarily about so can I ask you?
You can, John, did you want to comment on this point?
No, it's fine. So what Councillor Young is talking about micromobility is e-hire scooters and bikes. So Lyman Forest, yeah. And whether as a planning team, you start communicating with the transport team, and both of you start thinking about with these implements, could there be certain facilities that are hired for this? And this ties into my question, if the chair can indulge me.
Go ahead.
Is that whether we can actually, so there are 15 long stay spaces and 7 short stay places being proposed.
Is that cycle spaces?
Cycle spaces. And while I appreciate some of these guests may have themselves guests who may cycle, I find it very hard to believe that that guests will be coming with their bikes simply because a lot of them tend to be quite big. And I just wonder, specifically seeing as many of these guests will be coming into the city or Excel, maybe this is an opportunity to add a condition to, rather than have the cycle hire scheme proposed by TfL, which costs 200k, that we can actually have some micro-mobility bays, which cost a lot less, so 37,000, I think, one quote was. So this is an opportunity to add a condition for micro-mobility e-hire bays for e-scooters and e-bikes.
I did an application. I read the report. Some of the cycle spaces are for staff as well as guests. So staff cycle to work, they don't need cycle hire scheme or whatever. Yeah. That's my understanding. So I can see why you would ask the condition, John, but on this one, I'm not sure it's relevant because it's the staff as well.
Just to sort of wind back, just to make it very clear. TfL have made that request, but it's not been accepted by the applicant. Well, so there isn't a contribution of 250 to that. It's been disputed. It's officers have looked at the request and looked at the context of the site, its proximity to Canning Town Station, the fact it's providing policy compliant site parking on site. The fact that there are other operators in the area such as Forest and Lyme, where actually, people use them in a very different way. So you don't need like physical infrastructure on site. So for that reason, we've agreed with the applicant in this instance, was to prioritise the money towards crossing and connectivity. So that's to come to your point about, have we thought about that? Yes, we have, and we thought it's not, there are different options basically, and so we weren't going to sort of be fixed with that. And actually, in terms of viability, I think it was tricky, and so we focused on what was.
So, yeah, just to help for those following along, page 385, paragraph 208 explains the rationale as to why we've not accepted the TfL request.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I can find them. So what TfL is asking for from Santander stands, right? Contribution. What I'm saying is micro-mobility is very different in the sense that yes, it requires physical infrastructure, but it do require dedicated bays which do cost to install. Why I'm asking is, should we have a condition to install those bays at this site, which is different from the TfL's contribution for Santander's, which is significantly more expensive to install. And to Councillor Paul's point, one of the research that we have seen specifically around cycle hire is that sometimes people rather not actually purchase a physical capital item of a bike, but rather simply because it provides flexibility, but also security because it's not there like it's stolen, that people are more likely to prefer to hire a bike on a temporary basis or purchase their own bike, including staff.
I think I'm going to propose that we wrap up this item of discussion by asking officers to go away and to liaise with colleagues in transport about the micro-mobility work that's been done and see how far some of the aspirations for that policy can be met either by this application or indeed by subsequent ones. I think that would be really helpful.
I'll also share in there. There's a lot about micro-mobility, but my question will be, Newham is a different borough to Camden or Islington. So I've just asked that if we look at micromobility, we have an appropriate policy which meets the needs of Newham, less so than London. I think
that is a good point, but I think it falls outside the jurisdiction of this committee.
If the officers are going to go away, let's not have a cookie cutter scheme.
I think that's understood. Thank you. Blossom did also have a question coming back to the issue of the crossings, which I know came up in the previous application as well.
Chair, if I may, I can see the clarification. It's just been 30.
Okay. Oh, if you've seen the clarification, then we could move on if you're content with that.
Yeah.
Were there additional questions or comments from members? I'm just checking, see if I had any. I think mine have been dealt with. Oh, the only other question I had was I noticed on page 355 there were some concerns raised about the location and security of the cycle parking. Have those been resolved? So the design review panel had said about a cycle store for long stay parking, the location was not well overlooked, and they wanted to clarify if there was CCTV to see those spaces.
Sorry, that was a transport.
So there is a secure by design condition,
Mm-hmm.
which will require engagement with the police, who will look at the cycle store parking. Officers satisfy that its location is very visible to the ground, easy access, good sight lines from the road getting in and out. So yeah, we're off that position, but there are other safeguards of this condition that need further scrutinised.
Okay. That's helpful, thank you. In which case, I am going to move us on to the vote. Could I ask you to share your screen again, please?
Yes.
Bless you. So the recommendation from officers is to approve, to agree the reasons for approval as set out, and etc. You can see the rest of that there. Can I please ask those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you. That is granted. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm going to move on as fast as we can to agenda item 8. Do you mind, Joy, do we move standing orders to carry on half time? Okay. Okay. In which case, agenda item 8, the applicant's coming up to join us. Thank you very much. Did you want to present to the committee, or are you here to answer questions?
Got a speech.
Okay, yes.
Presentation, great.
No problem.
But then we've got others.
No, that's great. Thank you. So you can begin your presentation whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, for the members of the committee. My name is Jamie Dempster from Rock Planning, and I'm here to support the strong officer recommendation for approval for this application with redevelopment and utilized brownfield site, currently temporary use as a car dealership, into a residential scheme delivering 79 new homes. The principle of residential development here has already been established for a previous planning consent. What is now in front of members is a more efficient, high-quality use of the land. This application must also be viewed in the context of the significant housing needs. The borough is currently delivering below its capital targets, which triggers the presumption in favour of sustainable development as outlined by officers. In practice, this means permission should be granted unless harms are shown to be substantial, clearly outweigh the benefit. In this case, the harms are limited and the benefits are substantial. First, the scheme makes effective use of brownfield land, aligning with paragraph 125C of the NPPF and London Plan priorities to optimise land for housing delivery in sustainable, well-connected locations. Second, the design quality has been robustly tested. The scheme has gone through several rounds of design review, has evolved positively. It proposes 4 buildings ranging from 4 to 6 stories arranged to respect the surrounding context. Lower elements sit closer to neighbouring homes, taller elements petition where impacts are reduced. Development provides high quality of accommodation, majority of homes benefiting from
dual triple aspects, good daylight and compliance with good term space standards, policy compliant level of family homes and 10% wheelchair accessible units. The scheme also performs strongly in terms of sustainability. Suitable flood risk mitigation has been provided with on-site energy generation alongside net gain of tree planting and greening energy source, supporting both carbon reduction and environmental. For the development pathway, promoting sustainable travel, cycle path provisions met whilst improving permeability across the site, with contributions also made towards improvements at Royal Albert DLR station. A suitable provision of the state car parking spaces has also been agreed with TfL. Turning to affordable housing, this has been carefully tested for an independently reviewed viability assessment, which confirms the scheme cannot support affordable housing on site. Despite this, 150,000 off-site affordable housing financial contribution has been agreed alongside early and late stage viability. The council viability consultant agrees with this position. Beyond this, the scheme delivers wider benefits through Section 6 agreement in excess of 22.5 thousand per dwelling, which goes towards a significant contribution towards local employment skills and investment into transport and public realm improvements. In terms of objections, concerns have been raised around height, community and traffic. These have all been carefully assessed and addressed. The gallery height have been reviewed through the design process to the acceptance context. Community impact and daylight overloading and privacy within acceptable limits, particularly for this London location. There are no objections from LLFA, airport safeguarding, highways or TfL. Importantly, no statutory objective.
You have just under 2 minutes left.
When weighed in the planning balance, this scheme wholly represents sustainable development that complies with planning policy, with clearance of statutory benefits, including the delivery of 79 new homes in a borough of acute needs, the generation of a brownfield site, high quality and sustainable design, and meaningful financial contributions. I therefore respectfully ask members to support the recommendation and grant planning commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will move on to the officer presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Item 8 relates to the application site at 1 Stansfield Road. The site is located at the southern end of Stansfield Road, with 2-story residential properties on Redwood House Drive to the north, allotments to the west and south, and Beckton District Park to the east. The site itself is not designated green space and is currently occupied by a car dealership operating under a temporary planning permission due to expire in December next year. An outline planning permission was granted in 2013 for up to 36 residential units. The permission was not implemented due to commercial viability constraints at the time under a different landowner. The outline consent secured 12 affordable homes. The full description of the proposal is shown on the slide. The application seeks full planning permission for the demolition of the remaining structure and redevelopment of the site to provide 4 blocks ranging from 4 to 6 stories of 79 residential accommodation. 7 objections have been received from neighboring properties. The main issues are summarized on this slide and will be addressed in turn in the following presentation. The key planning issues which will be covered within the presentation are shown on the slide. All other material planning considerations are comprehensively covered within the committee. Principle of development. In accordance with paragraph 11D of the NPPF, the housing delivery test result confirmed that Newham's housing delivery was at 61% of its target. This triggers the presumption in favor of sustainable development. The principle of residential use on the site has already been established through the earlier outline consent, which confirmed both the acceptability of demolishing the former community facilities and the suitability of the land for housing. Given the site history, the site's brownfield status, and its absence from any protected designation, the proposed residential use is considered acceptable in principle. The delivery of 79 homes will positively contribute towards meeting the borough's identified housing needs. Design. The scheme has evolved possibly through the pre-application and design review stages. The DRP acknowledged the development would be visually prominent given the open character of the surrounding parks, allotments, and the proximity of low-rise housing to the north. However, the panel raised no significant concerns regarding the overall scale. As shown in this figure on the slide, the proposal presented in the first pre-app in 2019 is much denser than the current proposal. Under the emerging local plan, only blocks C and D are classed as tall buildings exceeding the 21 meter threshold by approximately 3 meters. Step back after the house, very parapet heights and increased vertical articulation help to reduce cuisine height and bulk. While the proposal does not fully align with tall building policies, it's considered that the limited harm arising from the building heights is outweighed by the wider public benefits of the development and planning balance. Through the imposition of planning conditions requiring submission of material samples and detailed drawings, the proposals would achieve a sufficiently high standard of architectural quality. Impact upon amenity. Some ground floor windows will experience daylight reductions. However, most will retain vertical sky component values of 23 to 27%. The most affected windows serve secondary accommodation and will remain adequately lit. Surrounding amenity areas remain fully compliant with BRE guidelines. Turning to overlooking and loss of privacy, separation distances to properties on Richard House Drive exceed 18 meters with trees greening in place. Within the site, one reduced distance of 17.1 meter is considered acceptable due to the multi-aspect nature of the affected rooms. Affordable housing. No on-site affordable housing is proposed. The council has appointed Quintic Advisory to undertake an independent review of its financial viability assessment and subsequent addendum. The existing car dealership generates a passing rent of £190,000 per annum and benefits from a temporary planning permission with less than 2 years remaining. And 8% of the taken rate has been applied, resulting in a benchmark land value of 290K. The proposed scheme assumes private residential sales values of 42.2 million, construction costs of 25.9 million, alongside standard allowance for contingency, fees, finance, marketing costs, Section 106 obligations, and sale. Developer profit is assumed at 17.5%. Based on the program and sales assumptions, the appraisal shows a residual land value of around 108,000 for a 100% private scheme. This represents a deficit of approximately 182,000 when compared with the benchmark land value. Quintic noted that there are no major site-specific issues that are impacting the scheme. However, the relationship between value and cost is smaller than would be typically expected. This is due in part to the high proportion of 3-bedroom units in comparison to what we would typically see. The values on a per square foot basis for family housing are lower than for units such as 1-bedroom apartments. Therefore, the gap between value and cost is reduced. Quintic reduced the benchmark land value from 2.95 million to just 290,000, and developer profit is at the lower end of the range. The applicant initially concluded that the scheme generated a deficit of 4.9 million. However, as a result of Quintic's amendments, the deficit is reduced to just 182,000. Notwithstanding the viability position, officers have engaged in further negotiations with the applicant and secured a financial contribution of 150,000 towards affordable housing. This sum would make a meaningful contribution to wider council-led affordable housing projects. While it is regrettable that the scheme cannot deliver on-site affordable homes, secured contribution is considered a strong outcome given the viability deficit identified. Given the viability represents a point-in-time assessment and may change as market conditions evolve, it is considered appropriate to secure both early and late-stage viability review mechanisms through the Section 106 agreement. Housing mix. The proposals includes 31 3-bedroom homes, representing 39.2% of the total. This meets the adopted local plan requirement and is considered compliant. Quality of accommodation. All of the proposed residential units comply with the minimum internal space standards and provide private amenity space in accordance with the minimum requirements. The scheme delivers 87% dual aspect or triple aspect units. No single aspect north-facing units are proposed. 98% of dwellings meet the daylight target criteria and 99% of dwellings meet the minimum sunlight target levels. Sustainable transport. The proposed development is a car-free development. There will be 1 car club space provided on site and 2 blue badge space. 150 long stay cycle parking space and 8 short stay spaces will be provided, meeting London plan standards. And there will be a £50,000 contribution towards improvement at Royal Albert DLR station and the travel plan contribution. This slide shows a response to the other points raised by the neighboring properties. In terms of the water and drainage impacts, Thames Water and they have been consulted and raised no objections subject to conditions. The enforcement of illegal parking and existing road safety issues are not material planning considerations. The proposed development would require the removal of one category B tree and planting of 23 semi-mature trees, together with a number of standard trees, which would deliver a net qualitative improvement. The scheme incorporates active frontages intended to improve natural surveillance. Unauthorized conversions from flats to HMOs would fall within the realm of planning enforcement. The proposal is not expected to give rise to any material birth-related impacts, and the planning system cannot control who individual market homes are sold to, nor can it restrict sales to UK-based buyers. This slide shows the key S16 head of terms. And as a summary for the reasons for approval, the scheme would deliver 79 new homes, making a meaningful contribution to housing supply. An independently reviewed viability assessment demonstrated that on-site affordable housing would render this development viable. Applicant has agreed to 150,000 for site affordable housing contribution alongside early and late stage viability review mechanisms. The design, scale, and massing were considered acceptable on balance, with the DRP raising no significant concerns. The proposal includes a policy compliant housing mix with 31 3-bedroom units contributing to identified housing needs. There will be an on-site diversity net gain of 29.76% and an urban greening factor score of 0.7. Redevelopment of brownfield site and the short-term economic benefits from construction are afforded significant weight. While some localized community impacts, including daylight, are identified, these are not considered unacceptable when weighed against the wider public benefits. Overall, applying the tilted balance, the adverse impacts are not considered to significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and the proposal is therefore recommended for approval. Strategic Development Committee is asked to resolve to agree to recommendations as shown on the slide. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to slightly abuse my position as chair and jump in first. And I'm sure you won't be surprised that the first question that I have to ask you is about the level of affordable housing. I mean, there's a couple of things here. I mean, the first is, if a development is proposed with absolutely no affordable housing, how does it represent any kind of benefit to the people of Newham? Because we really know what it is people in Newham need. They need affordable family-sized homes. We see them every week in our surgeries. They fill up our inboxes with stories of the terrible conditions they're living in at the moment. And so when I read through the application, I'm just really struggling to think, okay, well, if there's no affordable homes, then first of all, like, why is that? We've seen some really extraordinary applications. I remember there was one application on a gasworks site where they've got big listed Victorian structures, and there's obviously hugely contaminated land, and they're literally taking apart gas towers and sending them off to specialist refurbishers and then sending them back. And that had an impact on their viability, which even I could understand. And there we gritted our teeth, and I think we looked in the end at affordable housing contribution of 10%, and that was hard to stomach. But we were getting something slightly extraordinary back in terms of the contamination of the land, the refurbishment of the listed structures, in terms of some really imaginative architecture. And I kept flicking through this, and then particularly when I got to the comments from Design Review Panel, where we're still seeing some really quite strongly worded stuff about still struggling to see a strong architectural narrative, and there is much work to be done to make the landscape proposals feel convincing. It just brought me back to, like, what do the people of Newham actually get out of this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pass over to sort of Roy on sort of the design review panel process. It's going to be quite robust.
Can you speak up, please?
It's going to be quite a robust series of meetings, and we got to a point where it was a group of officers, including momentarily, that the design was acceptable. So I took the architecture treatment and particularly landscaping, which we did a lot of work on to actually make that acceptable to officers, etc. But I think in terms of just going back to the affordable housing point, this is very much just a position on this site where the revenues and the costs, sort of, if I put it down into simple terms, we're sort of looking at, I think, Quintic and our sort of viability consultant worked out that the average sales values are sort of around 666. Sort of per square foot. Yeah, I was going to say it's not that. No, but that's sort of working against the total build cost, which are around sort of 300 square foot, and just on this site, struggling to deliver. It's been confirmed by this. It's just
unviable.
What is it about this site that makes it unviable?
But I think there's just a few,
I mean, I've never seen anybody say that their site was anything other than really extraordinarily expensive. But this one in particular strikes me as being just very usual. I can't see anything. I can't see anything that would make it so expensive. How are you proposing to deliver 0%? And we've had other applications tonight which are more than 0.
Yeah, I don't want to get dragged into those other applications because they have their own viability context and constraints. I know that they might have a lower EUV compared to us. Obviously, building all the towers, the revenues out of that are just much stronger. So it is what it is, just in terms of this site, everything going into it. We've had quite a few development used to come in during the process. There were sort of really viability exercises undertaken, and I think the council only got to around 460,000. So on that basis, that was completely sort of wiped out by the additional Section 106 contributions. But we've looked at different BLBs, so benchmark land values on the site. I think the council came to a very different opinion to us, which is obviously still disputed, but in both scenarios, it was confirmed that it's just not viable. So we have gone to try and take your point, that we have gone to try and provide some sort of contribution, just so that that can deliver some contribution to it.
John, can I bring you in and I'll come to the matters.
I wonder whether officers can give some insights into the viability itself and what is it to effectively answer Councillor Tripp's question, why is it specifically about this area in particular, or from Councillor's perspective? And I also have a second question, Chair.
So we spoke with Quintec to see what their view was on that, because they advised us, and both of our interpretations are that one, this location is not in Stratford or Canning Town, very adjacent to well-connected transport nodes where values are typically higher. Its location typically has a lower value pound per square foot. And then secondly, this is policy compliant on the number of 3 bedrooms. It's 39% family sized of the total portion of units. That is sometimes balanced out on other larger schemes where you don't get 39% 3 bedrooms. You might be having 15% or 20%, but then there's a higher amount of affordable housing that comes with that. So those were the 2 main reasons as to why, in their view, the viability is challenged.
Thank you, James, for answering the question. My other question is, well, it's actually not a question, it's a comment. I think us as a committee really value the feedback of our design review panel. While we understand that, and certainly today's meeting is a good example of this, that some of our expectations just cannot be met. One of the things that we do at least expect is that all new builds that are built in are designed to a specific standard of beauty that we can take pride in our place. Certainly that's resonating with council and certainly with the government, pride in place, and thinking about having pride in our communities. And actually I would say that from my experience, having a good design shouldn't cost a lot. So I'm quite disappointed for the feedback from the design review panel is that the design is left lacking.
Rotherham.
Yeah, I'd really like to come back to the affordable housing. It's incredibly important. While it might be signified in terms of 3 bedrooms, it's certainly signified in terms of homes. So I had a couple of questions in relation to that. Firstly, around what is triggering the viability position. So, 150,000 contribution towards affordable housing for the council to deliver will get us a third of that, right? That'll get us a third of that. That's not significant material in order to deliver for families in Europe. I was intrigued by the comment about 17.5% profit margin. And I'm very intrigued about that being at the lower end, so I wondered what work could be done to push that, because if we're looking at 17.5% or £42 million worth of profit, that is a significant number. And I wondered if we could talk about observation on that. And thirdly, I wondered if you could explore any routes that would be able to up the affordable housing delivery, such as fund areas, affordable social proposed 10-year programme, or indeed on mechanisms. What route you've explored would genuinely make a contribution.
So yeah, the first comment, I think that was related to the GDP guideline. Is that the second question?
I'm sorry.
The GDP, you mentioned sort of 17.5% of GDP.
I understand that to be your problem.
Yeah, so
Based on your
I think we originally looked at 20%.
Well, I think percentage stage, given that everyone's having this trouble. We know it's difficult. We know it's difficult to build. People are making adjustments to the value they are taking.
Yeah, so that's what I ourselves have looked at. So I think we got to a position of agreement with Quintet at 17.5% of GDP. So that's kind of where we got to, on that position. We looked at other scenarios. I think the original viability appraisal where 50% sort of affordable housing was completed, it's about sort of 39 units, and that got to around a deficit of 8 million. So there was more sensitivity checking. I think once it got to around sort of 2.5% affordable housing, which will get to 2 social rent units, and that still generated a deficit of 24 sort of thousand. But I think in those scenarios, when you talk RFL, they don't tend to take on sort of schemes where they have that few affordable units essentially. So
it's pretty difficult.
Well, I can't speak to the case for ourselves, but when we sort of deal with applications of this nature, there's a lot of management and maintenance issues that, you know, to scale where they can't take units.
And like the grant.
My client hasn't applied for I know sort of the new GLA guidance has come in where it's opening up opportunities to provide more sort of opportunity to increase the housing. We obviously submitted this application quite a while ago. So that those GLA guidance, they just weren't in place at the time. So
Bidding in terms of what you're doing.
yeah, I appreciate that once an application is through section 73 to you know, if you can improve it, but at this stage that wasn't a consideration when the application used. We are where we are. We've got the position of the agreement.
Members, I've got a number of queries in my head about this application, and the more I hear about it, the more queries that I have. Specifically, I'm aware of the time. I'm not proposing to bring Toby in, but I am concerned about the number of issues that still seem to be outstanding from the final report of the design review panel. I'm really interested in some of very helpful colleague Councillor Young's questions about how much debate there was about the agreed level of developer profit, how much exploration there has been on applying for grants, how much liaison indeed there has been with registered providers about whether they would be interested in a very, very small number contribution. Based on that, and based on all those issues where I think we probably just need a bit more information so that we can make a proper decision, I'd like to suggest to the committee that we vote to defer this application. Do you think I could see a show of hands for those who are in agreement with that, please? You certainly can.
When we began the journey, the panel, the officers, we were 108 dwellings. We felt it was suitable, and we acutely aware as a practice of the need to create social benefit from our projects. And we're also acutely aware through all of our projects that sites where value is tricky, that density has a role to play. We also at that point have a mix of units that were leaning more towards 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings with a 3 bedroom again. With that what we intuitively thought would be a more viable position. And through the process of design review, that put the scheme to 39% 3 beds and 79 dwellings. And the point was made at that time and along that journey, that's giving us other very significant challenges to the viability.
I think the committee understand that any kind of development, you have a number of different factors which you have to hold in balance. And I don't think, I don't think that's specific to this site. I think we're very used to the idea of weighing up the different policy requirements. But I just think there's certainly from my, I don't want to speak for members, certainly from my point of view, I feel like there's a number of things that I really feel like I need a bit more information here. Mads, did you want to make one final comment?
You know my views on social housing, and my first thing that I've written down here is, because we really do not like off-site affordable housing. Okay, it doesn't contribute to the mix of people's environments within our. The thing I wanted to mention was, you mentioned early on in your presentation that this is an inner city location. It's not an inner city location to us. To us in Newham, Beckton, it's the nearest we have to suburbia. It's a very rurified area compared to the rest of the borough. And therefore, the types of housing that is traditionally been built there in the last 50 years or so, it's very much been at much lower density and with a lot more modern architectural design flair. So I was very concerned about your comment, and that kind of comment doesn't necessarily sit well with us. I think you need to research the specifics of an area, not just the borough, when you come to speak with us. One of the reasons you've mentioned about the value of the land is the fact that it's not Stratford or Canning Town, but it is close to a very close walking distance to a DLR station. It may not be apparent to you, but it is to us that you are within a very short view distance of the Building 1000, which is the council offices, and that basically you are going to be the first thing that will be seen from the mayor's office. So this is not something that's going to go down well with us, really, to have accommodation of that height in that kind of location. It just looks really incongruous next to the allotments. You know my views already on social housing, and I'm outraged, frankly.
Thank you for that. Members, I'm suggesting that we vote on deferring this application, and for complete clarity, our reasons for deferral are to allow the opportunity for further dialogue for improvements on level of developer profit, seeking grants and on-site affordable homes, clarification on the design, and in particular how satisfied design review panel on where the design has got to, and looking at the housing mix with a view to improving viability. Can I ask for those who wish to vote in favour of deferring this application to show their hand, please? That is unanimous. Thank you very much for coming this evening. That brings this evening's meeting to an end. I think the only item on the agenda is our next meeting, which is obviously set provisionally for the 23rd of June. I did just want the minutes, please, to reflect my thanks to officers for their work over the last municipal year and indeed this election term. Who knows which of us will still be here after the. For many of us, it's uncertain whether we will be re-elected or be reappointed. Two of us are very certain, so I would also like the minutes, please, to reflect our thanks to Councillor Terry Paul and Councillor Alan Griffiths for all their service to this committee. Very much appreciated. And many thanks to all officers. Jesus. And all the work that you guys have done. Thank you so much. And good luck.